This guy is an average guy who became traumatized after witnessing the death of his entire family. His childhood friend comes to comfort him, but for some reason, she has to marry him to keep him from dying too. Over time, our boy meets her crazy family but soon finds out his new wife's family is linked to the death of his own. The story begins with a guy named Taio who lost his entire family in a car accident. After that, he got scared to bond with people because he became afraid that he would lose them too. At the funeral, his friend, Mutsumi, tries to touch him but he jerks back. However, she holds his hand and assures him it'll be fine. Later, at school, some guys come to ask Taio to hang out but he turns them down again. They lament that he keeps turning them down time after time, even though they've been in the same class for about a month. While asking him, one of the guys notices that Taio has blacked out, so they figure that he's shy. Taio realizes he's not shy, and he's glad they asked him to hang out. When they leave, Mutsumi asks Taio why he turned away the nice boys again, but he tells her to leave him alone. Regardless, Mutsumi unloads the lunch he prepared for the both of them and forces him to join her to eat. Meanwhile, the other boys wonder why Mutsumi Yozakura, who is the idol of the school, would always give her attention to this kid. One of them mentions that Mutsumi and Taio are childhood friends, and one expresses his jealousy. In the class, Mutsumi tells Taio she's worried he'll spend the rest of his life alone. However, he asks her if she's his mom and reminds her of how she also turned down a third year named Tanaka. Apparently, Tanaka is good looking and is on the soccer team, but she turned him down. Because of this, Mutsumi teases Taio that he's also not her father and tells him not to worry about her. She points out that he needs to rehabilitate his communication skills and even tries to feed him. As the macho man that he is, our boy initially refuses, but she urges him until he opens his mouth. As he's about to eat it, someone else grabs the sticks and eats it. It turns out to be the vice principal, Mr. Rado, Hirokawa, whom Mutsumi berates because he had promised that he would stop snacking. Hirokawa apologizes that his body reacted to the aroma, but Taio wonders how he showed up out of thin air. When Mutsumi asks Hirokawa why he's not on his business lecture, Hirokawa confesses that he came back earlier because he's missed eating her lunches. Some call the FBI. Hirokawa even mentions that the white streak in her hair is so cute that he wants to rub his cheeks against it. Oddly, Mutsumi slightly blushes and threatens to report him. Eventually, Hirokawa asks Taio to come to his office when school is over, and our guy wonders why the heck. After school, Taio recalls the accident as he walks through the halls. He soon reaches the vice principal's office and finds Hirokawa waiting for him. When Taio sits down, Hirokawa sits down next to him instead of in front of him. Talk about a lack of personal boundaries. I wonder how this school has stayed running so far without being shut down. Eventually, when Taio asks why he was summoned, Hirokawa explains that he wanted to show him his collections of secret pictures he took of Mutsumi. Taio realizes this man is a total perv, and he considers reporting him, but he acts normally. Hirokawa even shows Taio pictures of Mutsumi at home when she was 3, and Taio almost loses his mind. Eventually, Hirokawa explains that he's been watching over Mutsumi from the shadows for a while, and he's been shielding her from men who want to prey on her beauty. He mentions Tanaka, who had approached her recently, and how he graciously asked Tanaka to back off. Truthfully, he almost strangled the poor boy till he died. Moments later, Hirokawa puts a knife to Taio's neck because he's been getting a ridiculous amount of attention from Mutsumi. Apparently, he's looked the other way since they've been childhood friends, but he can't turn away this time. Eventually, Hirokawa explains that he's doing this because Mutsumi is his kid sister, shocking Taio. Not long after, a random lady shows up in the office and saves Taio after releasing a bright light. After, Taio wakes up on a couch and sees Mutsumi along with 5 other people. They all look so irregular that Taio jumps away out of fear. However, Mutsumi assures him that it's alright and introduces them as her siblings. Apparently, the lady in white who saved him is Mutsumi's big sister Futaba. There's also her big brother Shinszo, as well as her big sister Shion. The person in the catsuit is Kengo, and the scientist-looking guy is Nanao. The last part of the family is a protective dog named Goliath, which is quite the irony. Apparently, they're a family of spies, and Mutsumi is relieved to be able to break open the secret after over 10 years. Taio can't believe his ears that Mutsumi comes from a family of spies. Even when he sees them handling guns, he believes it's a prank, until he holds one of the guns and it actually shoots. The family explains that being spies is actually an ordinary job, unlike in the movies, and adds that they have a review of 4.8 stars on the ranking sites. Kengo explains that Mr. Hirokawa is actually their big brother named Kyoichiro. Apparently, Kyoichiro is the most popular male spy that female spies want to be targeted by, but it's odd that he's such a creep. Taio is shocked to hear this, and he learns Kyoichiro is the best spy in their family. Confused, Taio asks why Kyoichiro would target him, so Futaba explains that they got some info that someone was planning to eliminate Mutsumi. Apparently, many years ago, Mutsumi suffered a near-fatal injury because of Kyoichiro, and the white hair she has is a remnant of that incident. Since then, he's felt great guilt and is obsessed over Mutsumi to an abnormal degree. Kyoichiro even changed his name and job so he can keep an eye on her. Since then, he's turned into a monster that protects Mutsumi from everything. And even though Taio has been her friend since childhood, Kyoichiro now has a good reason to eliminate him. Eventually, Futaba apologizes to Taio for the foolishness of her brother. Suddenly, an alarm goes off because Kyoichiro has entered the house, and it's clear he has come to finish Taio off. Our boy is afraid, but the rest of the siblings assure him that he's safe. They immediately lock all doors leading to the room, and they set several traps. They're prepared to beat up Kyoichiro, but they know the odds are 30% even at 5 to 1, and and there's a 45% chance of one of them needing a long hospital recovery. However, Taio can't stomach the thought of this happening to them. Because of this, Futaba suggests that he can just marry Mutsumi if he wants to avoid all that, and Taio is shocked. Futaba explains that they have a rule of being unable to eliminate a family member, and all he has to do is receive their Yozakura ring. For a moment, Taio doesn't know what to say to the idea of building a family with Mutsumi, and he recalls the family he lost. Eventually, Mutsumi answers for them that she can't do this because Taio lost his family, and it's too cruel to casually ask him to join their family. Eventually, Futaba apologizes for being insensitive. The family decides to prepare to fight Kyoichiro, and Kyoichiro soon appears amidst them drinking tea while they're arguing. They can't believe that he's already in their midst, and Kyoichiro commends Shinszo for doing a good job with the traps around the mansion. Immediately, Futaba warns him to back up from the kids, but Kyoichiro insists that Taio is guilty until proven innocent. Annoyed, Futaba grabs him by his tie and whirls him around like a doll, then breaks the couch with his back. This little girl has some crazy upper arm strength. You don't want to get into an arm wrestling competition with her. Shinszo immediately brings out his contraptions, and Nanao unveils a huge arm with which he uses to pummel Kyoichiro's face. While Shion and Kengo get the kids to safety, Kyoichiro blocks Nanao's attack with some strings. With these strings, he pushes them all back and destroys Shinzo's contraptions. When Kyoichiro gets up, he commends his siblings for the teamwork, but he asks them to hand Taio over so he doesn't rip the house to shreds. Futaba explains that the strings are called Steel Spider and are Kyoichiro's special weapon. Futaba then attempts to buy them some time so they can escape. She runs forward and tries to control the strings, but Kyoichiro ties her up with them. Eventually, Shion faces her big brother while Kengo escapes with Mutsumi and Taio. Shion uses her phone to call in some drones that start to shoot up the room, and the entire thing turns gangsta quickly. Outside the room, Kengo and Mutsumi lead Taio to a secret vault, and Mutsumi assures him she won't leave him. Shortly after, Kyoichiro handles Shion and the drones. He steps out and finds Taio behind Mutsumi, so he asks her to come hug her big brother. She walks towards him but launches Goliath at him while she holds a gun. However, Kyoichiro catches both of them with his threads, and he realizes that Mutsumi is actually Kengo in camouflage. He also recognizes that the Taio he's seeing is Mutsumi, so he tells her to tell him where she hid the boy. Realizing her cover is blown, Mutsumi removes her camouflage and tells her big brother to stop this because Taio isn't trying to take her life. When he hears that, Kyoichiro assures her he won't touch the boy, but he won't let her out of the house anymore. This is because the outside world is dangerous, and he also plans to cut out smartphones and everything external to keep her safe. Thinking about it makes him so excited, and he remembers how he almost lost her with so much pain in his heart. Even though she's holding a knife towards him, he ignores it and hugs her, piercing himself with the knife. Eventually, Taio steps out against Mutsumi's advice. But this time, Kyoichiro assures him he won't touch him as long as he doesn't get involved in his family's business. On the other hand, Taio realizes that Kyoichiro is just like him because he doesn't want to lose the thing that matters most to him, but he knows that it's destructive to make Mutsumi become so afraid just because he wants to protect her. Immediately, our boy proposes to Mutsumi that they use Futaba's method, and he says he's doing this because she said she will never leave him. She immediately tosses her half of her Yozakura ring at him and he almost catches it, but Kyoichiro ties both him and the ring with his strings. However, Taio drags away the ring and injures himself. He thanks Mutsumi for always protecting him, but he promises her that he'll protect her from now on. After he puts on the ring, the other siblings enter, and Kyoichiro can't believe his eyes. Mutsumi runs to hug Taio, and the other siblings rejoice. Eventually, Futaba tells Kyoichiro that he now has to teach the boy what it really means to protect Mutsumi. Later that night, Taio heads home and stares at the ring. He recalls how Mutsumi wanted to see him off and how hysterical Kyoichiro was after the shock and the blood loss. Before he left, Mutsumi held his hands and thanked him. In the present, our guy just collapses into bed. One day you're just trying to get by, and the next day you're married. The next morning, Taio wakes up with Kyoichiro standing over him with a knife. Immediately, Kyoichiro tries to stab him, but Taio jumps out of the way. Kyoichiro commends his reflexes, but Taio asks him what the heck he's doing. However, Kyoichiro claims that this is the traditional way of waking people up in the Yozakura family. When Taio accuses him of trying to eliminate him, Kyoichiro explains that he has to sleep with one eye open if he wants to be a spy. Meanwhile, Mutsumi hears Taio shouting upstairs, and when she checks, she finds that Kyoichiro has tied him to the ceiling with his strings. When Mutsumi challenges him, Kyoichiro explains they were just doing morning exercises and eventually lets him go. Suddenly, Kyoichiro tells the two that they have to leave immediately and drags them both out of the second floor window before the house explodes. When the house blows up, Kyoichiro explains that the house was rigged with a bomb. Kyoichiro explains that the Yozakura family's most important mission is to protect Mutsumi, and it's going to get harder soon. They all get into a limousine, and Kyoichiro learns that Shinszo was able to find a fragment of a time bomb in Taio's kitchen. Taio doesn't understand who planted a bomb in his house, so Kyoichiro explains that Mutsumi was their target. Apparently, the information of Mutsumi's marriage has spread like wildfire. Kyoichiro explains that his social media has been exploding with congratulatory messages since the day before. Confused, Taio asks why they target Mutsumi, so Kyoichiro explains that it's because she's the 10th head of the Yozakura family. Apparently, the Yozakura family can be traced back to the ninjas of the Edo period, who produced lots of people with superhuman abilities. One ordinary person known as the head is always born. Even though the head usually doesn't have supernatural powers, her offspring can inherit the incredible talents of the Yozakura gene. The job of those with powers is to protect the head, and that's how the family has always thrived. Apparently, Mutsumi is the legitimate leader and is the lifeline of their family. Although they don't care about lineage, the siblings want Mutsumi to live her own life. However, Mutsumi replies that she wants to fulfill her duty as the head since the others are devoting themselves to protecting her. Immediately, Kyoichiro becomes emotional because of how wonderful Mutsumi is and asks her what she's doing with a clown like Taio. Eventually, Kyoichiro explains that Mutsumi will have to make her underworld debut as the leader of Yozakura. Presently, her mission is to gain knowledge of the world, but those who are envious of the family will try to eliminate her along the way. While they're driving, some men tail them from nearby and launch explosives at their car. They manage to avoid it, so the men open fire on the car. Taio becomes scared, but Kyoichiro is calm because the car is bulletproof. At Kyoichiro's order, the driver speeds up and avoids the chasers, so the men decide to release the big guns. With a machine gun, they take out several other drivers by the road. Much to Taio's horror, Kyoichiro asks their driver to drive smoothly so he doesn't spill his tea. When Mutsumi assures Taio that Goliath will handle things, our boy almost faints and realizes the dog is the one driving them. Goliath is clearly a badass driver, and he avoids bullets like a pro. Annoyed that they spilled his tea, Kyoichiro goes on the roof of the car and even uses his strings to stop some incoming bullets. When explosives are fired at him, he slices up the explosives and even slices up the cars behind them, causing them to explode. Shortly after, Kyoichiro returns to the car and reminds Taio that their family lives perpetually in the fear of death, and he's now part of that. Moreover, he now has the mission of protecting Mutsumi. Determined to hammer all the lessons of being a spy into Taio, Kyoichiro tells him his mission today is to protect Mutsumi from assassins. Moments later, Mutsumi enters class and greets her classmates. Immediately, Taio jumps in with some pretty cool spy moves and begins opening lockers randomly and checking corners. The other classmates are creeped out, so they wonder if something is wrong with Taio. The three boys from before also come near Taio, but our boy growls at them. In a flashback, Kyoichiro gives Taio a gun. He even assures him that they'll sweep it under the rug if he manages to eliminate someone with it. Before he can refuse, Kyoichiro shows him the social media of the person he has to protect Mutsumi from. Apparently, this person is a reputable bomber named Tamaya. Immediately, Taio realizes this must be the guy who rigged his home, and he even learns that Kyoichiro has worked with the guy before on a mission. Even though they've worked together, apparently people switch sides in the underworld easily, and no one is to be trusted. Kyoichiro points out that Tamaya's weakness is that he's sorely addicted to social media. Apparently, Tamaya has been posting lots of poems about his jobs, his targets, and how it's going. Bro enjoys his job, don't they say? Do what you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. Kyoichiro explains that he can't join Taio on this mission because he has a massive number of hostages to rescue. However, Kyoichiro scares Taio by letting him know that this enemy will torture him with bombs and then take him out if he allows it. Apparently, Tamaya posted that he has 2 more explosions to do, so Kyoichiro charges Taio to protect his sister until he gets back or regret the day he was born. In the present, Taio looks around suspiciously. He hasn't found any bombs anywhere, but he wonders if the assassin has intercepted the school. Throughout the day, he follows Mutsumi around until he sees a notification on Tamaya's page that the second bomb has been planted. Suddenly, Taio sees a shady person moving inside the class, so he runs in to investigate. While he considers whether to open the class door, a certain lady asks him if something is wrong. He becomes afraid and says he's fine, causing her to smile in an odd way. Meanwhile, Mutsumi has lunch with some of her friends, who tell her about some UFO sightings. Apparently, someone in an upper class recently said she saw herself walk out of the restroom while she was walking in. They even mentioned that someone saw a trash can moving on its own. While that's going on, Taio reads on Tamaya's page that he's set up the final bomb. After following Mutsumi around all day, he noticed she doesn't quickly eat things she's given, and she's always with others to protect herself. Shortly after, the boys from before offer him a chocolate and he eats it. The boys are confused that he took it from them, especially because he'd usually panic or pass out if they said his name before. Immediately after they say that, he gets a panic attack again, but he tries to hold himself together because of his wife, but it doesn't work out. After he wakes up from passing out, he finds Mutsumi standing over him after putting him on a couch. Taio apologizes for his mistake and asks Mutsumi if she's certain that he's the one for her. He feels he knows nothing about her and didn't know her life was always in danger, even though they're childhood friends. He believes their marriage was out of his selfishness, but Mutsumi slams his head and tells him she always wanted him. Bro just won in life. She clarifies that he married into a family of spies and his bride can pass away at any time. It's such a ridiculous offer, but she confesses that she's always wanted him to be her husband. She even thanks him for marrying her, and our boy is speechless. However, he notices a timer bomb on the ceiling and realizes they're in trouble. Suddenly, an explosion is heard throughout the school. Meanwhile, Nanao and Kengo watch the explosion occur from nearby, and it turns out Kengo was the one disguised as the lady. Inside the room, Taio manages to protect himself and Mutsumi by hiding behind the couch. Annoyed, Taio wonders how their enemy could have known where they'd be to plant his bomb. Immediately, he recalls that Mutsumi had told him that the infirmary was closed, and that's why they brought him here, so he realizes that the enemy had lured them there by observing their movements throughout the day. Immediately, Asano checks his clothes and finds the bomb planted on him. Apparently, he was announcing his plans on social media to keep him glued to Mutsumi during gym so he could plant the bomb on his clothes. Because the bomb only has a few seconds left, Taio is forced to jump off a higher floor so he doesn't take Mutsumi down with him. As he falls to his doom, Kyoichiro suddenly appears with a string and catches him, disabling the bomb at the same time. Kyoichiro recognizes the bomb and is impressed that Taio was able to detect it. As a reward for completing the mission, Kyoichiro promises to not let Taio die for the sake of Mutsumi. Moments later, Kengo, Nanao, and Shinszo break into the room they're in, carrying Tamaya with them. Shinszo delivers Tamaya to Kyoichiro, so Tamaya asks if he can get some mercy. However, Kyoichiro puts his own bomb on him and tosses him into the air, where he blows up like a firecracker. The crazy siblings even clap as they watch the demonstration. As if that's not crazy enough, Tamaya keeps updating his social media fans that he's about to get eliminated. Later that night, Mutsumi invites Taio to stay with them because his house got destroyed, but Kyoichiro has to hold himself back from peeling the skins off Taio's body. He even warns him that their beds are so comfortable that he just might not wake up. Sometime later, Taio finds himself in a destroyed place and finds a strange man holding Mutsumi hostage. The man taunts him for being unable to protect one woman, and Taio soon wakes up from the nightmare. He steps off the bed but mistakenly steps on Goliath, who takes a bite out of his skin. Later on, Mutsumi puts a bandage on Taio's hand. She apologizes that she asked Goliath to guard him so that Kyoichiro wouldn't bother him anymore. She starts to peg Goliath and remind him not to attack Taio, but Goliath still growls at Taio when he distracts Mutsumi from petting him. Shortly after, Taio goes to ask Futaba to make him stronger. However, he explains that they're planning to train him slowly because he's ordinary, but Taio believes this will take too much time. He doesn't like how he couldn't do much the last time that Mutsumi was in danger, and he explains to her that he wants to be strong to train Mutsumi. While he's raising his voice, Futaba grabs him and waves him in the air like a flag. She explains that she may not look strong, but she knows Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu. Apparently, she started training at age 3 and went on her first mission at 6. With Yozakura talent, it took her 3 years to go on her first mission, and she believes it would take more for an ordinary human. Eventually, she cushions his floor with a chair and tells him that just emotions aren't enough. However, because of his strong feelings for Mutsumi, Futaba suggests that they try something called the Yozakura-style all-out training, but the condition she gives him is that he must live in the mansion for 1 month first. As Taio is glad because the requirement is so easy, so he steps forward to thank her, but he soon falls through a trapdoor in the ground with spikes inside. Mutsumi was this close to losing her husband. Immediately, Futaba explains that their house has several traps everywhere for spy training. Apparently, all these traps are just beginner stuff, and if Taio can't master it in 1 month, mastering their real technique is just a dream. And die. The next morning, Taio is woken up by a crazy chicken alarm. When he doesn't wake up, the alarm literally detonates, forcing him to run out of his room. When he runs out, he places his hand in the wrong place and triggers an onslaught of fire that almost grills him. He soon reports to the table smelling like bacon, but Futaba tells him the bright side is that the alarm helped him wake up. Mutsumi tends to Taio's wounds, and she becomes worried that she's gotten him in trouble by asking him to live with them. Suddenly, Kengo suggests they prepare for Taio's funeral, but he ends up with a bump on his head. Eventually, Taio learns that the traps don't activate for Mutsumi. Shion soon explains that he can also set the traps not to go off for him if the house accepts him. Apparently, all the traps in the house are controlled by a computer, and being able to clear all the traps gives one access to turn them off. When Shion mentions that he should be able to defeat all the traps in 2 years as a normal person, his stomach begins to turn. It turns out that everyone's food, except Mutsumi's, is laced with a little poison to build their resistance. Shocked, Taio runs towards the toilet but finds an advanced security lock at the entrance. While he struggles, Kyoichiro walks past him, slightly feeling satisfied. Meanwhile, Shion explains that one has to pick the lock on the bathroom and crack the password that resets every minute. Unsettled, Mutsumi gets up to help Taio, but Futaba stops her. Soon after, Kyoichiro steps in, excited by the entertainment Taio was providing. From that day onward, Taio continued to live in hell on earth. The next morning, the weird chicken alarm goes off, and every member of the house deactivates it in different ways, but Taio's room gets detonated again. Shortly after, Taio picks a drink from the fridge without setting off the lasers. Futaba comes in next and picks 2 drinks at the speed of light. When it's Taio's turn, he triggers the lasers and the fridge goes full. Terminator mode on him. From that, he learns agility. Later on, our boy has the task of shooting a gun to push a button on a remote, and that trains him in marksmanship. While they're eating, everyone casually eats, but Taio keeps getting runny stomachs. When he runs to the toilet, he has to unlock the door again to train his analytical ability, while the others play around like it's nothing. Sometime later, Taio turns on the shower carelessly and unloads an outpouring of hot water on himself, and that's to train his accuracy. At school, Taio looks like he's glued to his seat and he can't tell his classmates that the shirt he was given weighs about 30 kg. On a certain night, Taio walks through the house exhausted and goes to cover Mutsumi with a blanket after she sleeps off from working late. He goes outside to practice shooting at the remote again just to turn on the TV, but his accuracy is still nonsense. Soon after, Mutsumi approaches him and suggests he take a break. When they step in, she gives him some tea and starts to express her worry that he's pushing pushing himself too hard because of her. Our boy denies it, so she tells him that she believes he's not weak at all. She recalls how they were just neighbors when they were much younger, but things changed when they entered junior high. Apparently, her cursed-like white hair drew attention during their matriculation ceremony. Later on, some girls accuse Mutsumi of trying to draw attention with her white hair. As one of them is about to cut off her hair, Taio collects the scissors from her and starts to cut his own hair, despite Mutsumi's protest. When the girls realize he's cuckoo, they make a run for it, but Taio only mentions that it's about time he got a haircut. He tells Mutsumi to tell him if someone ever tries to touch her again. In the present, Mutsumi explains that Taio has always been protecting her, so she grabs his hand and asks that he not push himself too hard. The next morning, the alarms go off again, but our boy deactivates his this time, much to the chicken's surprise. He even gets downstairs and evades the lasers. When he gets to the living room, he shoots at the remote and manages to turn on the TV this time. Shinszo is surprised that he can now turn on the TV, so he shows him how he can aim the gun to change the channels. Later, Taio asks Shion why Shinszo always stays in the garbage can, so she explains that it's because he's lazy and shy. When Taio goes upstairs, Shion and Shinszo realize that Taio is learning at a pace that's faster than normal. She wonders if it's talent or something else. Meanwhile, Taio cleans his hand in the restroom and looks at the scars on his hands. Downstairs, Futaba and Kengo notice Nanao and Goliath crawling under some nerve gas that's coming out of an AC while showing Taio how it's done. Sometime later, Taio passes the traps easily again and comes to the table. After 3 weeks, he has breakfast properly, but when he takes the milk, he's forced to rush to the toilet again, and Mutsumi starts to cry because she gave him the milk. After Taio collapses in front of the door, the siblings tell Nanao to get him some medicine. Later, Taio wakes up in a bed in Nanao's lab. It turns out that Taio was brought down by a fever due to fatigue, so he's asked to rest, but our boy decides he'll keep going. However, Futaba notices something is wrong, so she pulls away the fake skin he's wearing and unveils all the bandages on his body. Futaba explains that she's been onto him from the start, and he could only achieve extraordinary results by using extraordinary measures. She knows he must have taken advantage of the skills of the siblings, so Futaba chides Nanao for taking part in this suicide mission. Taio tells Futaba that it's his fault because they all pleaded with him, but he insisted because he wanted to find a way to protect Mutsumi. Annoyed, Futaba gives him a karate chop in the face and reminds him he can't protect others if he can't protect himself. While he recovers, she gives him a book called Elemental Code Breaking to read. When Futaba steps out, she realizes she might be mistaken. Normally, if one drives themselves that close to the edge, their soul would give out before their body. She realizes there's something stronger than talent or hard work driving that boy. It must be his love for Mutsumi, which must be insanely high. Futaba watches videos of how she used to play with Mutsumi when she was younger and realizes that Taio might be more capable than she imagined. Sometime later, Taio manages to unlock the restroom door, and the others throw him up in excitement. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro and Futaba watch them from nearby. Moments later, the ring on Taio's hand shines to show that the house has recognized him as a Yozakura. Futaba congratulates him and explains that he'll start training as a Yozakura from now on. Immediately, Shinszo gives Taio 100k clothing instead of the 50 he's wearing, and they increase the difficulty of the traps to hard. Sometime later, Taio comes to ask Mutsumi how to put on a bra. She gets confused about his sexual orientation and says that she'll accept him regardless of it, so Taio quickly confesses that he's working on his disguising skill. Shortly after, a hot-looking chick steps in to show Taio how it's done, but Mutsumi detects that it's Kengo in disguise. This boy is nasty. Shortly after, Shinszo steps in to find Taio, but finds 2 ladies trying to force a bra on Taio. He believes that this must be a fetish that the married couple has. When Taio tries to clear the air, Kengo rubs his face in his jugs and insists their relationship is no misunderstanding. Later, Kyoichiro comes to get a goodbye kiss from Mutsumi before he heads out on a mission, but Mutsumi knocks him out. After that, Taio learns that Shinszo is heading out on a low-level mission to retrieve the original plate of counterfeit money. Before he leaves, Shinszo gets Taio a gift. When they get to school, a ball from the court almost hits Taio, but he catches it without looking, shocking the others. As if that's not enough, he throws it back without looking with great precision. The men ask him to join their team, but our guy doesn't listen to them. Later, while having lunch, Mutsumi points out to Taio that he's becoming more superhuman because of his training. She worries that he's going to blow his cover in school if he doesn't tone things down a little. While they're eating, Mutsumi asks Taio to help her with something after school. When they get back home, Mutsumi starts to stamp several documents and she goes through the numbers. When she finds something shady, she gives Taio instructions on what to do. Apparently, all this administrative work is her job as the head. Also, once in a while, Kyoichiro also sneaks in fake divorce papers to separate Taio and Mutsumi, so she tells him to ensure he burns them all. While going through the papers, Mutsumi notices Kengo didn't attach the paperwork to his mission report, so she goes to speak to him about it. When they enter his room, the entire place is covered with a heap of clothing he uses as a disguise. When confronted, Kengo claims a few pieces of paperwork don't matter. Eventually, Kengo jumps out of the heap completely naked and claims that he's healing his body from all the disguises. He wags his junk in front of them and claims that it's no big deal since he and Mutsumi used to bathe together when they were younger and she always liked it. Annoyed, Mutsumi attempts to discipline him, so Kengo makes a run for it. When Kengo escapes, Mutsumi activates the home's hibernation mode and a wall automatically goes up around the house. Meanwhile, Shinszo infiltrates the warehouse where the counterfeit money is made. He recognizes the technology is quite sophisticated and spots the director of the company while looking through the vents. While listening in, he learns that someone else is pulling the strings. Shortly after, Shinszo takes out some guards to get the counterfeit plates, but he mistakenly triggers an alarm. At the house, Mutsumi searches for Kengo using heat ray vision. When Taio enters her room, he learns she has learned several skills during the time she couldn't leave the house. They both check Shion's room but don't find him there. After that, they check Futaba's room and Nanao's lab but don't find him. They even check Goliath's crib but he's not there. But it turns out Goliath lives in a very posh room. I can't believe a dog is richer than I am. After checking Shinzo's room, they check out Kyoichiro's room. Once inside, they find the walls covered with secret pictures of Mutsumi and a single chair in the middle. You can't go creepier than this. Mutsumi doesn't say anything and just proposes they keep looking. Taio wonders if Kengo had stepped out, and they soon run into Futaba and Shion. While chatting with them, they realize that Kengo has disguised himself as one of the paintings, so they chase after him. Taio chases Kengo into a corner, but Mutsumi soon finds Taio on the ground. When she asks him where Kengo went, Taio points at a secret passage that even she didn't know about. This annoys her, and she's forced to disable hibernation. Later on, they both check Kengo's room again, but Mutsumi handcuffs Taio from behind, certain that he's Kengo. She explains that it's impossible to escape the mansion during hibernation, so he trapped the real Taio to make her disable it. Apparently, she figured it out because Taio would usually let her pass through a door when he opened it, but he didn't do that. Kengo realizes he's been had, and he flashes back to a time in the past when his mother told him about holding on to his younger sister. In the present, he pulls off his mask and confesses that she's got him. Later, Taio is released and Kengo apologizes for what he did. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro returns from his mission and finds out that Mutsumi had discovered his secret stash, so he begins to panic. While having dinner, the family receives a distress call from Shinszo on the family hotline. When they switch to video call, Shinszo cries for help and asks Mutsumi to come save him. Shinszo explains that he's run out of bullets because he's surrounded, and he's powerless without his weapons. This time, Mutsumi decides to send Taio in to give him more ammo. Taio infiltrates the warehouse, but a man soon points a gun to the back of his head and asks who he is. Immediately, Taio remembers how Shinszo had taught him to disarm someone who points a gun at the back of his head. He executes it perfectly and knocks the guy out, but some other guys hear the noise. When the men approach, Taio uses some sort of super focus to detect that there are 3 enemies with guns and knives. When the first guy shows up with a gun, Taio knocks him out with his knee. When one other guy stabs him, he can't penetrate because Taio is wearing stab-proof clothes. After kicking the last guy in the nuts, Taio notices one other enemy watching him from afar, so he uses the weapon Shinszo gave him as a fit. The weapon releases a burst of electricity, allowing Taio to attack the man. Later, Taio finds Shinszo where Mutsumi is trying to calm him down by reading a gory version of Red Riding Hood to him. Shinszo immediately hugs Taio in tears because he was so scared and soon begins to caress the guns he brought instead of escaping. The guards soon discover them, and as Taio is about to react, Shinszo jumps in and shoots the guns out of the men's hands in a few seconds. After handing Taio the counterfeiting plate to stop the men from shooting at him, Shinszo uses one of the men as a body shield and faces the rest of the guards. Somehow the guards shoot at him, but miss his body shield entirely. As if that's not ridiculous enough, Shinszo shoots the guns out of their hands instead of shooting the men. This seems like some Batman stuff where the bad guys don't ever die. Instead of shooting them, Shinszo knocks them down by throwing his body shield at them. When some guards come again, Shinszo throws a grenade in the air and shoots it to make it explode. While Shinszo and Taio escape, a sniper spots them and shoots Taio in the leg. This is what you get from sparing bad guys. The sniper tells Shinszo to put down his weapon so he can stop Taio from bleeding out, so Shinszo drops his weapon. Taio recalls how Mutsumi had told him that Shinszo will willingly submit his prized weapons to protect someone he cares about. However, she tells him to give him something if that ever happens, so Taio throws the fork at Shinszo. Shinszo grabs the fork, and it turns out that anything Shinszo can hold is a powerful weapon. Shinszo throws the fork into the opening of the sniper gun, and that forces the sniper to switch to a pistol. The sniper shoots but misses, and that gives Shinszo enough time to pick up his gun and fill him up with holes. Later, Shinszo carries Taio home and apologizes for forcing him to come here. Meanwhile, a strange man tortures the guards in the warehouse with a hammer and demands to know who hired them. The sniper from before refuses to tell him, so the man breaks his head open with his hammer and looks at a picture of Taio. Sometime later, Taio has a call with Mutsumi, where she talks about a Ferris wheel that can make couples happy. She expresses her desire to spend the day with him and go to the Ferris wheel, but Taio is forced to abruptly end the call when he is approached by the man who tortured the guards. The man introduces himself as Detective Seiji Hodokiyama and tells Taio to come with him. Seiji takes Taio in for investigation and shows him a picture of him strangling a guard that was posted on the dark web. The man also shows him pictures of him possessing firearms, being in a car chase, and blowing up his school. Seiji feels there has to be more to this and believes he's working for a secret organization. He offers Taio immunity as long as he reveals those he's working with, but Taio refuses. Eventually, Seiji offers Taio some water and pours something inside. When Taio accuses him of lacing his water with truth serum, Seiji insists it's just minerals to help his body and forces it down his throat. However, Taio has a throat balloon used to catch water for magic tricks, and that saves him. When Taio insists he knows nothing, Seiji breaks his chair with a a hammer and chases him. Suddenly, Taio slips over a corpse of a drug dealer whom Seiji had apparently brought to justice. Seiji promises to do the same to him, and Taio isn't sure he's really a cop. When Seiji holds him by the throat, Taio sees one of Kyoichiro's strings behind him and understands what's going on. He tells Seiji he knows nothing, so Seiji decides to break his head with his hammer. Eventually, our boy manages to dodge the attack, so Seiji's hammer breaks the wall behind him, revealing Kyoichiro. Kyoichiro tells Seiji that he's a terrible actor, and he explains to Taio that Seiji is a friend of his from junior school. In exchange for helping him with police investigations, Seiji covers up the activities of the Yozakura family. When Kyoichiro asks Seiji how his little brother did, Seiji admits that he passed because he didn't sell out his allies. That gladdens Kyoichiro, so he tells Taio to find his way back to school. When Taio gets back to school, he looks like a mess, which gets Mutsumi worried. Soon after, Vice Principal Hirokawa shows up, which is just Kyoichiro. Hirokawa explains that their teacher is dealing with some urgent business, so he'll be taking over their modern Japanese class today. Hirokawa asks Taio why he doesn't look so good, but Taio just glares at him. Eventually, our boy closes his eyes for a few seconds, but he suddenly feels something aiming for his head. He manages to dodge it, and the chalk breaks through the wall behind him. Using Morse code, Hirokawa taps the chalk on the board to explain to Taio that a spy must learn to control his sleeping patterns. Apparently, birds can put half of their brains to sleep, and humans can too. Hirokawa adds that he also graduated from total sleep when he was 15. Hirokawa explains that he will monitor his heart rate with his threads and will send a chalk flying at him at the speed of sound if he starts sleeping. Taio can't believe he's doing this in the middle of class and expresses his frustration using Morse code. Mutsumi also vents using Morse code and tells Kyoichiro to back off, but Kyoichiro is just excited by how cute she looks when angry. Regardless, Taio promises to ace this low-level test, so Kyoichiro decides to increase the difficulty. Kyoichiro releases sleepy gas in the entire class, causing the other students to pass out, except for Mutsumi, who carries her gas mask with her. When she looks over at Taio, she notices he's slumped over, so Kyoichiro decides to finish him off. When Kyoichiro throws a chalk at him, our boy deflects the chalk with the electric gun he was given. Mutsumi is glad that Taio was awake, but is later shocked to realize that he was actually moving in his sleep. Kyoichiro is glad that Taio has achieved a half-awake state, but Mutsumi is worried that she's turning him into a monster. Excited, Kyoichiro fires several chalks at him, but Taio expertly dodges them and defends himself with a gun. However, Mutsumi laments that Taio is getting less human. She hopes it was a fluke, but after that time, Taio begins to sleepwalk all over the place. Sometime later, Taio reads a spy book about winning a woman's heart. He learns that 90% of spy marriages end in divorce because they lose connection due to overwork. That gets him worried, so he decides to ask Mutsumi out on a date. While he's saying it, he receives a call from Seiji, who gives him a mission to embark on immediately. Distressed, Taio heads out to the location of the mission, which turns out to be a park. When he gets there, Seiji informs him that a couple with guns is lurking within the park, and his mission is to smoke them out. His job is to look out for anyone looking suspicious, and when one girl asks her mother why Taio is sitting alone among other couples, Taio realizes he's the one looking suspicious. While lamenting, Taio is approached by Mutsumi, who offers him a drink. Apparently, she got the info from Mr. Seiji, so she decided to help him to protect his cover. Taio is worried that she may be in danger, but Mutsumi assures him she can take care of herself, and she tells him to try her drink. Although initially uncertain, Taio decides it may be a perfect time to have fun with Mutsumi. He keeps his eyes on three tough-looking couples in front of him and decides to shower love on Mutsumi just like a lovey-dovey couple behind him is doing. He decides to compliment Mutsumi too, but all he can say is that her dress looks good and would be easy to do high kicks in. What a loser. One of the dangerous-looking couples who look like they run a rock metal band gets up, so Mutsumi proposes they follow them into their ride. Once in the ride, the rock metal guy starts screaming like a wuss, but Taio actually slept off during the ride. The lovey-dovey couple is also there, but they seem to be having fun. After the ride, Taio apologizes to Mutsumi because he's stressed out, and the hardcore guy also apologizes to his girl because he can't stand those machines. The hardcore lady tells him he's fine and offers him a drink, but they both jerk backwards when their hands touch. What the actual heck, guys? Since these guys look like average couples, Mutsumi suggests they focus on the couple that looks like they just got out of the army next. They decide to join them and the lovey-dovey couple in the next ride. In the next ride, Mutsumi and Taio have some fun, and the lovey-dovey couple enjoy themselves as usual. Meanwhile, the army couple love it so much they share a kiss, so they realize these couples aren't the target either. They decide to follow the last couple, who seem dressed like CIA agents, into a shop full of roses where the lovey-dovey couple are too. When they follow them into a tea shop, the man tells his date that he wants to show her something. Taio becomes worried he's about to bring out a gun, so he prepares his own gun too so he can act. However, the man brings out a ring and proposes to his date, who simply acknowledges his proposal like an order from her superiors. Talk about not judging a book by its cover. Taio begins to lament that he can't find the couple with the gun, so he decides to bring out a rose he got from Mutsumi. Suddenly, he hears the lovey-dovey couple arguing because both of them have been looking at other people during their date. The guy stands up to leave, so they point custom-made guns at each other and begin to unload rounds of bullets. Taio is forced to run for cover and protect a kid hiding under a chair while everyone runs. The couple continue shooting and even take out a poor teddy bear that was just minding his business on the counter. They even tear up the rose that Taio wanted to give Mutsumi, but somehow they fail to hit each other with their bullets. Annoyed, Taio fires electric shots at them and tells them to piss off. Later that evening, the police show up and arrest the couple. Seiji also shows up and congratulates Taio for doing a good job. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro tries to muffle his screams when he learns Seiji sent Taio to an amusement park with Mutsumi. At the park, Mutsumi takes Taio into the famous Ferris wheel that is said to allow couples to live happily ever after if they can see the sunset. While enjoying the ride, Taio gives her the rose that he got for her and apologizes that he destroyed the flower. However, Mutsumi's face becomes hot red and she happily thanks him for the flower. Later on, a strange lady named Ayaka hacks into another computer and she keeps gasping like she's about to erupt in pleasure. Meanwhile, Shion completes a mission and is glad she can finally sleep after 80 hours. Little does she know that the hacker is hacking into her computer and she wakes up to find out that the hacker has released a bug into her system. It shows up as a quest on her end and Shion causes error messages to show up on the hacker's computer. Distressed, Ayaka quickly unplugs her computer, causing the bug to fly away. When she plugs her computer back in, Ayaka discovers several pictures of Taio. When the sun rises, Shion trudges through the halls like a zombie. Mutsumi learns that she pulled an all-nighter because someone hacked into the computer and snooped through Taio's pictures. She assures them there's nothing to worry about because they got nothing important and she updated the security. However, she wonders how they snuck in since only the siblings know the access code. On their way to school, Mutsumi and Taio find it odd that only his information was investigated. On their way to class, Taio notices a strange person throwing around spikes, so he takes Mutsumi and heads in the other direction. The person turns out to be Ayaka, who secretly chases after the two of them until they reach a dark alley. Cornered in the alley, Taio prepares his gun, but Ayaka attacks him from above. He quickly spots her, and he quickly uses the metal on his weapon to deflect her spikes. Ayaka is forced backwards, but she's excited by his strength. When Taio asks her who she is, she calls him Master Taio. She explains that she loves him and pleads with him to die. Immediately, Mutsumi recognizes Ayaka's spikes and realizes she's Ayaka, the famous manhunter spy. However, Ayaka promises to stick 1,000 spikes in her eyes if she calls her a manhunter again. Mutsumi explains that Ayaka uses her spy techniques to follow men she's infatuated with until she eliminates them with spikes. Ayaka confesses that she fell in love with Taio when she first set eyes on him on a video from the underworld. To top that, a certain underworld organization put a bounty of $100,000 on his head. While chatting, Ayaka takes out a man who is watching them from a nearby building with her spikes. Apparently, the bounty is making several people want to eliminate him for impure reasons, but she explains that she will have him for herself before anyone else. Of course, eliminating him because of her infatuation is as pure a reason as one can get. She explains that she adores him and knows about how he doesn't step on plants when infiltrating, how he fixes things he destroys on missions, and even buys a train ticket for missions when he'd have to force himself onto a train. When she asks him to come to her, Taio points out that he can't let himself get taken because he's married to Mutsumi. Suddenly, Ayaka bursts into tears and asks Taio why he'd choose that ugly woman over her. She explains that she wants to take out Mutsumi right now, but she can't because Kyoichiro didn't permit her. The others are shocked to learn that Ayaka had actually gotten permission to target Taio from Kyoichiro since you can't target a Yozakura behind his back. Kyoichiro had given her the permission to take out Taio as long as she didn't harm Mutsumi and even gave her the access code to their system to get his info. Eventually, Ayaka escapes and tells Taio they'll meet again. When they reach school, the students are told they have a new transfer student who turns out to be Ayaka. Mutsumi and Taio can't believe their eyes, and Ayaka even gets the seat next to Taio. As she moves forward to have a seat, she intentionally slips and throws a spike at Taio, but he manages to block it by putting a book in front of him. Later on, Taio returns to class but finds his chair full of spikes. Another time, he presses his pen and a spike comes out unexpectedly. During basketball training, Taio runs to catch the ball but is forced to escape when it suddenly ejects spikes. During class, Taio does some reading and catches a spike directed at him out of nowhere, and that bothers Ayaka. During break, our boy has lunch with Mutsumi and dodges several spikes while eating. Sometime later, he has to block several spikes with his book, and Ayaka, who seems to be going mad, asks Taio why he won't accept her feelings. Annoyed, she throws out some needles into the backs of everyone in the class, which turn out to be mind control pins. The pins turn the students into servants of Ayaka, and she orders them to subdue Taio. The students gather around Taio and hold him down, but Mutsumi soon tells Ayaka to undo what she did to the others. While they're talking, the assassin that Ayaka numbed with poison from before points a gun at her from behind. When he shoots, Mutsumi pushes Ayaka out of the way and saves her life. When the man attempts to shoot both the ladies, Taio shoots him down with her gun. Later on, Ayaka asks Mutsumi why she saved her, so Mutsumi explains that it made her glad that someone else could see how great Taio is, even though it's kind of extreme. Immediately, Ayaka falls in love with Mutsumi and confesses that on the spot. When they head home, Ayaka clings to Mutsumi while Mutsumi feeds her ice cream, but Taio can't even believe what is happening. Later, Ayaka confesses that she still plans to take out Taio so she can live out the rest of her life with Mutsumi alone. When they get home, Taio goes to Shion's room because he received a call from her. Apparently, she's created a new game room, and she brings in Taio to come play with her. Mutsumi, who is nearby, reveals to Taio that Shion always ropes someone in to help her with her games, and Shinszo recently collapsed after staying up with her for 5 days. However, Mutsumi promises to offer support, but Taio becomes worried his life is in danger. To calm him, Shion Shion explains that they're just doing a trial run and they begin. The game is about the Yozakura family, and in the game Shion and Taio go around to defeat enemies that show up. The enemies appear with Kyoichiro's face and both of them take them down with several moves. They soon encounter a boss train that they have to take down, and Taio uses all the strength in the finger to press until they push down the train. They finally win, but Taio wonders why the heck they did that. He soon learns from the news that a runaway train has suddenly come to a halt, but the reason is not known. When Taio realizes what had happened, Shion explains to him that she usually hacks into the system of her targets and turns it into a game of her making to be able to clear it. After that, Shion shows a real helicopter that is about to be crashed into a thermal plant in real life and explains that their next game will help them stop them. Shion is excited, but Taio isn't prepared at all because of the risks involved. However, Shion doesn't listen to him and they begin the mission. Inside the game, Shion points to a swarm of flying creatures which represent the helicopter and explains that they have to stop them from entering the area. She also hands Taio an object that can help him revive only once. When they get closer, the swarm of monsters attacks and Shion pummels them a lot of times. Meanwhile, Taio is struggling to control his character but eventually finds a secret glitch in the game that makes him super strong. It annoys Shion that he'll use a cheat in the game, but Taio doesn't even know what's happening. Annoyed, Shion decides to show him how it's done and then goes ahead to land a punch in the head of the huge dragon boss. In real life, the helicopter drops out of the air. In the game, Taio goes to celebrate with Shion, but they suddenly notice a swarm of smaller dragons heading towards the place. When they switch to the real cameras, Shion realizes her opponents have several drones as backups that they didn't know about. Since this is too much for her to handle, she's forced to use a system that she didn't want to use. While she's doing that, Taio suggests another way. Taio and Shion climb on the huge dragon and use the fire from its mouth to destroy the smaller monsters. In real life, they use the helicopter's guns to fire down the drones. Apparently, Taio had used the revive item he was given on the helicopter. In real life, a few of the drones escape their reach and move towards the target, but the person that breached their data the day before lends a hand and destroys the rest. Shion is angry, but Mutsumi and Taio immediately realize it's Ayaka. Meanwhile, Ayaka continues her hack to be able to get more information on Taio. She also plans to get some lovely photos of Mutsumi if she gets the privilege. Eventually, she strays into the game Shion is currently playing and is forced to fight the small monsters because she thinks they're out to get her. Taio is pressing the keys of his controller faster than a woodpecker, and that's because he's a noob. Ayaka continues to take out monsters as Taio and Mutsumi take out more monsters with the dragon. Soon after, they clear out all the enemy's drones and Taio is relieved. Ayaka is also relieved she didn't get taken down, but Shion soon corrupts her system with errors again. While that's happening, Shion compliments Taio's skills and thoughtfulness. However, to show him he can't get by on games without cheats, she ties him down to continue to play. This time, Mutsumi realizes she can't help him. After a 3-night stretch of gameplay, our boy finally passes out, while Shion keeps playing hard. Sometime later, after a gory bloodshed, a spy named Oga tells his partner, Sway, about an awesome kid he saw in the papers. The kid is named Taio and apparently he married someone in the Yozakura family. However, Sway isn't interested as none of that has any use to their mission. Shortly after, Nanao calls Taio, who's a big brother to him, and asks Taio to come pick him up. Taio agrees while working out with a 500-kilogram weight and asks Nanao for the location. Nanao mentions the evil laboratory where they secretly manufacture weapons like biogas. He explains that he came here on a secret mission to get their new germ bomb named Sodom that can wipe out all life forms within a 10-kilometer radius. Although he'd like to take it with him, Nanao realizes it's too dangerous, so he decides to eat it. Taio begins to panic when Nanao consumes it, but Nanao explains to him that his body is far more effective at digesting and breaking things down. He explains that it'll take his body about 3 hours to neutralize this, but he'll be drowsy for those 3 hours. Luckily, Nanao had put everyone in the lab to sleep with some gas, so he asks Taio to come get him before they wake up. Taio gets the location from Nanao, who soon passes out because of the drug. Soon after, Taio breaks into the lab easily but notices something is off. He moves deeper into the halls and notices the guards knocked out. They've also been injured and the security has been breached, so Taio realizes Nanao isn't responsible for this. When one of the guards corners him with a gun, someone standing nearby takes out the guard with a chain. It turns out to be Oga, who's standing alongside Sway. Sway recognizes him immediately, but Oga, who's a complete meathead, begins to frantically search for Taio, unaware the person he liked in the magazine is in front of him. When Sway insults him, Oga angrily reminds him that he's lost his glasses, until Sway reminds him they're on his forehead. Eventually, Sway introduces his moron colleague and himself as government spies for a company named Hinagiku. Sui explains they were sent to neutralize the lab, and Taio realizes government spies work differently from freelance spies like them. When Sui asks Oga what's going on inside the lab, Oga uses some superhuman senses to detect some people working in an underground base. As the spies continue their work, Oga insists on dragging Taio with them and tells Taio to give him his autograph after. They make their way through the levels and take down bad guys. Regardless of how well Taio fights, Sui isn't impressed even though Oga won't shut up about it. When they make their way to the last lab, Taio finds Nanao, who's fast asleep. As Oga releases his chains to take out Nanao, Taio is forced to knock back the chain with his knife. Eventually, Taio learns that their job is to take out Nanao. Apparently, the spies had listened in on their conversation and they know Nanao has ingested the weapon of threat. To ensure national security, they tell Taio to step aside, but our boy tells them they'd have to eliminate him first. When Taio steps between them, Sui moves past Taio with ridiculous speed. Sui explains that this is a waste of time because spies don't have time for emotional appeals. Moments after, Taio's gun is cut in pieces, and he collapses after sustaining several cuts to his body. Sui condescends on him for letting his guard down with them after meeting them moments ago. He also wonders why Taio would wait to shoot instead of just shooting and starts to speak lowly of the Yozakuras. However, this annoys Oga, who almost gets into a fight with Sui but hesitates. As Sui is about to take Nanao out, Taio pleads with him, but he doesn't listen. Eventually, Nanao gets up and explains that he's finished detoxifying the poison and gives him a patch test to prove it. Because of this, Sui decides to spare him since that means their mission is complete and takes the patch test as documentation. Before he leaves, he gives Nanao an ointment that heals/wounds, but he wonders if it wouldn't be better for the Yozakuras if Taio passed away since he isn't very skilled. Immediately, Nanao rushes to Taio, who is bleeding out, and pleads with him not to go to the other side. Sometime later, Taio wakes up in the house roasting over a candle fireplace. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro sits nearby and shows him the front page of a magazine named Spy Day, which mentions how Taio was defeated by the government spies. The article calls it the downfall of the Yozakura family and even attacks Kyoichiro as a pervert. Kyoichiro is certain the reporter may not live for long, but he points out that Nanao would have been eliminated because of his weakness. Suddenly, Nanao and Mutsumi hit things on Kyoichiro's head at once and force him to apologize to Taio. Eventually, Mutsumi sets Taio free, but Taio admits to them that Nanao was exposed to danger because of him and he tarnished the Yozakura name. Nanao tries to explain that he was actually the one who saved him, but Taio insists that he couldn't do anything because he's weak. Eventually, Kyoichiro tells Taio not to overestimate himself because his single screw-up can't take down the Yozakura name. However, to help the situation, Kyoichiro tells Taio that he can destroy the Hinagiku organization. Meanwhile, Sui takes the train and a certain loudmouth guy insults everyone and disturbs them with his legs. When Sui tells him to stop, the man refuses, so Sui slices off his clothes in an instant. Later, Sui walks to another part of the train and detects Taio, who is concealing himself. Sui asks him if he's here to avenge himself, and Taio flashes back to a conversation he had with Kyoichiro. Kyoichiro had told him that a war between spies is a war of intel, and he had to steal Hinagiku's intel to defeat them. His mission is to spy on the spy. In the present, Taio admits to Sui that he's inexperienced. However, for his family's sake, he tells Sui that he'll learn all he needs to improve from him. Sui is surprised that he'd openly announced that he's tailing him, but he tells him to do what he wants. Sui lets him follow as long as he can keep up, but Sui moves away with such fast speeds. Taio recalls that Kyoichiro had told him about the Hinagiku's fast walking technique that allows them to move silently at high speeds. It can also be used in battle, and Sui is quite skilled at it. Because of this, Taio takes Kyoichiro's advice and jumps down on Sui from a height. However, Sui slices off his clothes in front of everyone in the train station. Sometime later, while Oga and Sui are on another mission, Taio tails them, but Sui slices off his clothes again. On the third day of tailing them, Taio climbs to the side of a tall building to watch the teammates have lunch. He can't believe that Sui is holding himself up by the sword he stuck into the side of the building. While he's looking, Sui uses the same sword to tear his clothes once more. On the 7th day of tailing Sui and Oga fight with some gangsters. Taio lends them a hand and electrocutes some of their opponents. Meanwhile, Oga is excited that the kid was able to follow them till evening this time. While Oga encourages Taio to give the other guy a low kick, Sui slices off Taio's clothes again along with the guy he's holding. When he misses Taio's trousers, Oga encourages him to finish his work, so Sui slices the trousers along with Oga's clothing too. Meanwhile, Nanao returns to the house and finds Kyoichiro in the kitchen. When he asks Kyoichiro about Taio, Kyoichiro explains that he found him passed out in the front door and he guesses the spies must have dealt with him again. Nanao guesses Kyoichiro must have carried him in, but is shocked to realize that Kyoichiro used him as a cutting board for his vegetables. Nanao pushes Kyoichiro out of the way and wakes Taio up. When Taio tells him what happened, Nanao asks him why he's pushing himself so hard. Our boy explains that he has to because he doesn't like being so lame that he cannot protect his little brother Nanao. However, Nanao reminds him of the amazing things he's done and how he's always surpassed their expectations. Because of that, Nanao tells him he's cool, and that touches Taio. Suddenly, Kyoichiro gets up and speculates that Taio is simply doing this because he enjoys being slashed and stripped naked. Annoyed, Nanao knocks Kyoichiro miles away and warns him not to call Taio a pervert. Suddenly, from their conversation, Taio realizes something. On the 10th day of tailing Sui, Taio tails Sui till night, and Sui admits he's the first person who's managed to do that. Suddenly, Sui pulls out his sword to put an end to this and show Taio he can never defeat him. Taio is tense, but when Sui attacks him, he's able to catch his hands. Even though he's slightly injured, he's able to do this because he's studied Sui's attacks many times. When Sui gets free, he realizes why the Yozakura recruited Taio. Because of this, he admits to Taio that he may have some potential. Over time, the first article about Taio was forgotten, but another article about him being a pervert spy with a picture of him being naked was published. This time, even his own family struggles to believe he's not a pervert. Sometime later, a party is held where a famous politician, Yoshimasu, does an odd performance in a bird suit while while wearing female heels. Meanwhile, a spy named Rin corrects her men for failing again with the mission, but she mentions that she has a backup plan in place. At the house, Mutsumi asks Taio to help her carry some things around. They go into a park, and Mutsumi eventually leads Taio to Sui. Taio almost drops his jaw when he realizes that Mutsumi knows Sui. Eventually, Sui leads them to meet the leader of the Hinagiku team, Rin. Sui leads them into a cafe and requests a very specific drink that sounds made up. The bartender gets the message and opens a secret passage underneath them. Apparently, the Hinagiku's base is 300 meters underground. While they're falling, Sui carries Mutsumi and offers her the drink the bartender gave him, and Taio is surprised it's a real one. When Taio talks about how Sui is holding Mutsumi, he explains that he has to because of how dangerous it is. Apparently, the entrance is filled with traps for protection and training. Sui soon begins fighting off some arrows, while our boy screams and regrets why he came there. When they get inside, Sui tells him he'll get crushed by the huge metal ball falling behind them if he doesn't get out of the way. He doesn't move out of the way because he's dazed, but he's soon saved by Rin, who comes to break the metal ball with her fist. After she does that, she asks him if a weakling like him can really keep Mutsumi safe. Soon after, they all sit down to enjoy some confectionaries, but Taio doesn't eat anything because he can't wrap his head around what the heck is going on. After exchanging pleasantries, Rin thanks Mutsumi for coming. Later, Mutsumi explains to Taio that Rin is an old classmate of Kyoichiro and she regularly throws tea parties like this from time to time. Taio realizes he went through all that trouble so they could just come to a tea party. Apparently, the big bag was just full of sweet things. When Rin tells him not to say Kyoichiro's name, referring to him as a dirtbag, Mutsumi explains that Rin and Kyoichiro don't get along well, so Rin begins to cuddle Mutsumi and explains that she hates Kyoichiro because of how much he holds down this adorable girl. It's clear Rin is just as obsessed with Mutsumi as Kyoichiro, but in a different way. Eventually, Rin clarifies that she wanted Mutsumi to marry a strong man that could protect her from Kyoichiro, but she doesn't believe Taio would cut it. Rin also mentions that Sui had told her that Taio is a scumbag turd, but Sui clarifies that he had only said that Taio is lower than excrement. However, Mutsumi defends our boy by explaining that he has a very strong soul. While they're talking, the well next to them is suddenly broken, and Kyoichiro steps in. Apparently, Kyoichiro realized that Mutsumi must be with Hinagiku because he couldn't track her on the GPS. When he demands that they hand her over, Rin tells him to piss off, but Kyoichiro explains that being in the presence of a female gorilla like her will corrupt Mutsumi. When Kyoichiro launches his wires, Rin breaks them with a single punch. However, Kyoichiro is bent on slicing her up, so they both get into a close-range fight. The fight causes so much destruction that the base has to activate an emergency alarm. Mutsumi laments that this always happens, and Sui goes in to separate them. He moves pretty fast to get in the middle, but both fighters tell him to piss off. When he moves in closer, they push him away just with the energy of their fighting. Eventually, Mutsumi decides to separate them, but she's almost caught in between the punches of both of them. When Taio realizes she'll be hit, he pushes her out of the way, and they punch him instead, knocking him out instantly. Annoyed, Mutsumi threatens Rin and Kyoichiro to never talk to them again if they keep causing trouble, and that causes them to plead for mercy. Eventually, Rin admits that Taio has some balls. Later, Rin gives Taio a mission to go investigate the dancing politician named Yoshimasu. Meanwhile, Mutsumi ties up Kyoichiro, who had passed out because of her threat, so he doesn't cause any more trouble. Yoshimasu is known for giving his speeches and promising public reform while doing a weird dance in a weird bird suit. Because of this, he's the politician with the most momentum, but he also has a track record of bloodshed. Apparently, he's accompanied by 3 political spies named Red, Blue, and Yellow, who also know how to twist their waists like freaks, just like their boss. Apparently, Yoshimasu uses these men to perform bribery, assassinations, and many other things. Also, he's about to make a major move because of the next general election, and they've confiscated a miniature bomb that may be related to him. However, because of how low-key Yoshimasu is, they can't link him back to these bombs. The bomb smuggler never got to meet his customer, but they were able to retrieve a short video of something that looks like the politician's headshot while he was asking for the bomb. Because the video isn't enough to get them a warrant, Rin mentions that they have to get more intel before anything bad happens. Taio is surprised Rin wants him on this mission, so she explains that Yoshimasu knows about Hinagiku but may not suspect an outsider. Immediately, Rin orders Sui to tear off Taio's clothes, and Mutsumi immediately clothes Taio up as a pretty-looking woman. Taio wonders what the heck is going on, so Rin explains that Yoshimasu's team posted an ad for a job opening with the description of a woman they're dressing him to look like. Later on, Yoshimasu does another performance, and he introduces a new dancer to them, named Yoko Asada. Yoko is just Taio's undercover name. While the performance is going on, some men come to protest against Yoshimasu as a tyrant who only gives policies that oppress people. Suddenly, a fight breaks out between these men and Yoshimasu's supporters, causing a speaker to fall on the politician. After they help Yoshimasu up, he sympathizes with the pains of those who came to thwart his work, and that surprises the men. That expression of goodwill touches all of them, and they all cheer Yoshimasu on as he's taken into the ambulance. Yoshimasu dismisses Yoko and the ambulance leaves. On transit, Yoshimasu thanks them all for their performance with a protest and how well they timed his injury, which was all an act. Because of this act, Yoshimasu gets more love from the public, so he tells his men to send the footage around so the foolish people will worship him. However, he doesn't know that Taio is hiding somewhere inside the ambulance. Later, Later at Yoshimasu's base, Taio tries to go through the party's accounting records, but he doesn't find anything. Later on, at a debate against an opponent, Yoshimasu urges his opponent to counter his point, but his opponent is unable to because Yoshi's spies have poisoned his drink. Taio becomes worried that he's been unable to get a single clue and there's a possibility of a bomb explosion coming up. Although he's been watching them for a full day, he hasn't been able to get anything, so he wonders how they keep committing crimes without discussing their plans. All they do all day is dance with one another. When Yoshi drags Taio in to dance, he gets tired and notices their rhythms are so weird. However, he soon discovers the dancing moves are actually Morse code, which they use to communicate about illegal dealings. While they're dancing, Taio learns about a terrorist bombing attack they're planning for the next day. The next day, Yoshi meets with the deputy prime minister. Taio had recalled when Yoshi spoke to his men about taking down the men who will come to this meeting, since they are men that will stand in his way. They plan to set the bomb underneath the stage and take out all the politicians on it while also pretending that Yoshi was hurt. During the meeting, Yoshi intentionally triggers the explosion, but only a nearby fountain explodes. The people go out to investigate, and it turns out that Taio had moved the bomb to the fountain because he couldn't deactivate it. Immediately, Yoshi points a gun at Taio and explains that he has another bomb, and even recognizes Taio's true identity. After shooting Taio in the head, Yoshi triggers his second bomb and takes out all the men. However, after triggering the next bomb, he's shocked to realize the bomb only causes fluffy substances to pour over the other politicians. Suddenly, Taio gets up and Yoshi realizes he had used blood spray pellets to deceive him. When all four of them point their guns at Taio, Sui moves past them and slices up their guns like a badass Hashira. After placing Yoshi under arrest, his spies split because they don't get paid enough for this stuff. When Yoshi points another gun at Sui tears off all his clothes but leaves his underwear because no one wants to see an old man's junk. Later, Sui tasks Taio with the job of delivering Yoshi to the chief back at the base, but warns him that Yoshi might do suspicious things. While on the bus, Yoshi tells Taio about the accident his family got involved in and hints that Taio's family death wasn't just an accident but an assassination. When Taio demands to know what he knows about his family, Yoshi refuses to answer. Suddenly, Taio gets a call from Sui, who informs him that the deputy prime minister, Shirasagi, has been kidnapped by Yoshi. Apparently, Yoshi got his men to switch Shirasagi with a decoy during the commotion. Taio is tasked with interrogating Yoshi to get the location of the kidnapped person. Suddenly, Yoshi sets himself loose of his bind and drops his earring, which is a bomb. An explosion is triggered and the bus is destroyed. Later on, Nanao works on an experiment that explodes in his face. Mutsumi comes to check on him and finds him collapsed with several growths sticking out of his body. When he returns to normal, Nanao tells Mutsumi that he's worried that Taio has been badly hurt during the mission. Because of that, he's trying to make something to heal him up if that's the case. Even though Mutsumi is also worried, she decides not to brood over it, but she prepares a feast for him to recover quickly. While that's going on, Kingo works on a new face for Taio to use. It becomes back unrecognizable. Meanwhile, Shion also takes out all their haters online so they don't cause too much problem for Taio when he returns. Also, Shinszo seems pretty worried that he refuses to come out of his basket. However, Kyoichiro enjoys a nice cup of tea with Futaba. When they notice, Futaba tells him there's no need to worry, but Kyoichiro explains that his tea tastes better just by imagining how painful Taio's death will be. At the spot of the explosion, Taio helps out the driver, and he can't forget the things that Yoshi had said about his family's death being an assassination. He soon receives a call from Sui, and he explains the situation. However, Sui explains that they expected that because Yoshi isn't just a cultish politician. He explains that Yoshi is a spy whose former alias was Kuragao. Apparently, he was a legendary spy that was thought to have died about 6 years ago, but was suddenly discovered. Sui explains that they planted a tracker on Yoshi, and they'll be able to find him and the deputy prime minister. At the location of the kidnap, Shirasagi wakes up and finds Yoshi in front of him. Yoshi sets up his meeting with Shirasagi to be live streamed so he can tell the media about it. Yoshi explains that he actually has no interest in politics, but he's been wearing a disguise to conceal himself from Shirasagi. When he takes off his costume, Shirasagi is shocked because Kuragao was something he was certain that he had killed. Kuragao explains to the viewers that he's inflicted vengeance on numerous politicians behind the scenes, but he wants to eliminate Shirasagi publicly so he can reveal the truth. When Kuragao holds Shirasagi at gunpoint, he refuses to say the truth, so Kuragao decides to take him out. However, the camera is suddenly taken down by Taio before Kuragao can pull the trigger. When Kuragao spots Taio, he shoots his gun out of his hand. At that point, Taio remembers the training Futaba gave him and closes the distance between them and subdues Kuragao. However, Kuragao recognizes the jujutsu move that the Yozakura develops and overpowers Taio easily. Kuragao even picks up Kyoichiro's wire from Taio's body, and it's clear he has knowledge of the techniques of all the siblings. Eventually, Taio asks Kuragao why a spy like him would become evil and begin to target good politicians. To answer that, Kuragao explains that he's doing this for revenge. In a flashback to when Kuragao was still a spy, governments placed high value on him because of his good work. After a specific mission, he puts on a costume to celebrate the birthday of his daughter Yuri. She finds it amusing and thanks him for coming home, since he's always been busy after the death of her mom. However, when Yuri mentions that she received the present he sent, Kuragao realizes it's a bomb. It's too late, and the explosion takes takes out Yuri, causing Kurogao to weep bitterly. Apparently, those who hired him wanted to dispose of him after he had served his purpose. Class villain story. In the present, Kurogao points a gun at Shirasagi, the last man standing among those who plotted the death of his daughter. While Kurogao is speaking, Taio goes in again to attack him, but he's suddenly stopped by the three spy twins. Kurogao tells Taio to step back now because he doesn't want to hurt him, especially since he also knows how it feels to lose a family. He even offers to tell Taio the details about what happened to his family. Taio agrees with him but states that he doesn't want any more people to die. Suddenly, Sui shows up and cuts the ground beneath the three spies, throwing them into the lower floor. While Sui faces the three spies, he leaves Taio alone to face Kurogao. Moments after, Taio attacks Kurogao with a poison knife, but Kurogao recognizes that it must have been made by Shinszo and uses the knife to cut Taio. Taio is soon knocked down and begins to bleed out, and Kurogao tells Taio he's naive if he doesn't want people to die anymore, especially since his daughter died. Meanwhile, the three spies tell Sui a government dog like him can't subdue them. One of them has the power to control fire, another can cut through anything, and one can use electrical signals to affect the mind. However, Sui finds them arrogant and uses the moving technique of the Hinagiku called walking on flowers. This is the move that allows him to move swiftly, and he explains that it's a basic move that anyone can apply if they master it, but he knows they won't be able to stay out of his range. When the brothers attack him with a combination of their power, Sui simply slices through it using a move called Underwater Blossom and cuts all three of them down at once. So much for their flamboyant display. Sui realizes he needs to get back up to help Taio, but he suddenly becomes tense when he realizes there's a strange presence watching him. On the top floor, Kurogao reminds Taio about the never-ending pain of losing one's family. Taio agrees with him and confesses he felt like that when he lost his family. However, he recalls Mutsumi, who was always by his side, and explains that it changed him. In the present, Taio explains to Kurogao that he doesn't have to accept the pain, so he charges towards Kurogao. However, Kurogao is cocky because he knows all his techniques, but Taio suddenly fades away when he gets in front of him using the walking on flowers technique. Kurogao is shocked that Taio was able to pull it off, and Taio recalls how Kyoichiro had told him that he can defeat Kurogao by exploiting something about him that he doesn't know. Taio quickly holds Kurogao's hands, but as Kurogao tries to slice him up, Taio blocks the knife. Kurogao reaches for his gun, but Taio uses one of Shinszo's techniques to stop the gun, and he knocks the old man to the ground. On the ground, Kurogao admits to Taio that he's beaten him. He realizes that Taio has refused to give up unlike him, and he decides to tell him all he knows out of respect for his passion. As Kurogao is about to explain, he's suddenly shot in the throat by an unseen person. As he bleeds to death, Kurogao hands him a piece of paper and passes away. Later on, Taio finds a map on the paper that leads him to a tree that was planted above Yuri's burial spot. When he gets to the tree, Taio finds a small box in the tree's opening, just like Kurogao had written down. Our boy soon returns home and finds his family waiting for him, except Kyoichiro, of course. Later on, Rin holds a party to celebrate the success of the last mission. She serves Taio a mountain of food called a Hinagiku hot pot from animals that Chief Rin gathered with her bare hands. Later, Kyoichiro shows up uninvited because of Mutsumi, and Rin tells him to piss off. When he decides to take away his specially brewed Yozakura blizzard drink, she tells him to stay for a bit. Later on, they cook the animals Rin got, and Taio serves Mutsumi her portion. However, Kyoichiro knocks Taio away and decides to give Mutsumi his own carefully selected food portion. However, Rin soon ticks Kyoichiro's head on the table and tells him to stop interfering. Annoyed, Kyoichiro starts to throw food at Rin, and she does the same. When a food war breaks out, the others are forced to run away. Oga decides to go between them to retrieve some meat, but he gets pummeled by a fish cake. The battle is so intense that the rest are unable to eat, but Sui decides to use his picking flower technique to avoid the food being thrown to get plates of food for them. Later, Sui explains to Taio that he needs to keep building his walking on flower technique so it doesn't affect him. After the fight is over, Taio secretly checks the box he retrieved and realizes it contains information about his family. He's suddenly cornered by Mutsumi, who almost sends his spirit out of his body, and she realizes it's the box about the things about his family. When she suggests he open it, our boy confesses that he's afraid that things will change if he opens it. Taio explains that he's worried that he'd do the same thing that Kurogao did if he found out other people had eliminated his family. After explaining his dilemma, Mutsumi simply kisses Taio on the cheeks to comfort him. When she stops, she realizes how embarrassing it is, and Taio begins to panic that something has gotten into her. However, Mutsumi assures him that he'll always be Taio regardless of how much he changes, and she'll always be by his side. Suddenly, they both notice the box had fallen over and a small marble had fallen out. Kyoichiro, who is standing nearby, explains that it's a method of storing visual data, and it's possible to extract the data. Kyoichiro had witnessed Mutsumi peck Taio, and his eyes started to pour out blood, so he attempted to eliminate Taio so he could record his last memories on the marble. However, Taio is soon saved by Rin. When they get home, Taio suddenly finds Ayaka on his back after he complains of being tired. She refuses to calm down, claiming she's recharging him, but he forces her off. When he asks what she's doing here, she claims she's here to protect him and Mutsumi from assassins. Soon, Mutsumi explains that they asked Ayaka to come work with them on a live-in basis. Taio can't believe his eyes, and he learns Ayaka will be working with them as a maid. He asks Mutsumi if it's really okay to put Ayaka in the house, but Ayaka soon begins to narrate all the recent missions he's done, which means she's been keeping an eye on him. When Ayaka retrieves the optical drive he got, Shion recognizes it and promises to try to decrypt it even though it's old. Taio angrily asks Ayaka why she contacted Shion, but Ayaka explains that his bounty has increased greatly and people are after him, so she has to look out for him. Apparently, she's here to give him skills to prevent him from being assassinated, but she's going to do that by trying to assassinate him regularly. Taio asks Mutsumi if this is really okay, but Mutsumi claims it's for his own good. Sometime later, Taio passes out due to exhaustion. Mutsumi covers him up and tries to make some tea, but she notices that Kyoichiro's best tea, dark sweets, has finished. Taio soon goes to the bathroom to clean up, and he's soon ambushed by Ayaka in the bath with a phone. He trips over due to shock, but Ayaka hits him with some poisonous shampoo that he's forced to turn away from. Suddenly, Ayaka is electrocuted when the traps the house set in the electric baths are activated. Taio tries to save her, but Ayaka warns him to make a run for it so as not to get electrocuted. Regardless, our boy holds on to her and is able to destroy the energy source that's embedded in the wall. A huge explosion occurs, leaving a naked Taio on top of Ayaka. As if on cue, Kyoichiro walks in on them and asks Taio why he would invite another woman into his bath while he has Mutsumi as a wife. Immediately, Kyoichiro brings out a torture mechanism to use on him, and Taio realizes he's in trouble. Our boy runs away in shock, and Ayaka runs after them, as it seems her love for Taio has been reignited by seeing his package. The next day, Taio goes out for a mission, but Mutsumi tries to give him his phone, which he had forgotten. When he receives a call from someone named Kaoru, Taio quickly comes to grab his phone from her hand and ends the call. When Taio leaves, Ayaka appears and claims that these are signs of cheating with a sneaky link, but Mutsumi explains he's probably busy with missions. However, Ayaka reminds her that Taio now showers before coming home every morning, and he now turns off his phone to conceal his location, as well as leaving on his own. She's certain these are signs of cheating, but she's more disturbed than the actual wife. The next day, Mutsumi drags Taio out for a walk with Goliath and mentions that he's been moving around a lot recently. She explains that she's happy to spend quality time with him. When Taio talks about Goliath, Mutsumi explains that Goliath refuses to go on walks with anyone but the family head. Apparently, he's a wolf dog, an artificially and specially bred animal. Suddenly, Goliath stretches and suddenly increases in size. Taio can't believe his eyes, so Mutsumi explains that Goliath is a guard dog that has been serving them since the time of her great-great-grandmother. When she hops on Goliath's back, she asks Taio to hop on too, but Goliath knocks him to the ground. To be able to keep up, Mutsumi gives Taio Goliath's leash so he can keep up with the walk. When the walk begins and Goliath starts to walk faster than a nearby train, our boy realizes this was never a walk after all. Goliath is so fast that he even runs on water just like Flash. Later on, they end up in a park and some kids gather around Goliath. Suddenly, a bomber named Happy the Clown spots Mutsumi. Goliath senses something is wrong, but when he realizes it, an explosion is already triggered. Goliath covers Mutsumi and the kids, but they soon realize that Taio was standing behind them to protect them all along. I don't know how this guy is pushing off bombs with his back now. It annoys Mutsumi that someone hurt Taio, so she orders Goliath to track down the bomber from the materials. Using his super sense, Goliath tracks down someone and heads out. Meanwhile, Happy the Clown watches Mutsumi from a nearby camera. However, he doesn't know that Goliath has already intercepted his base, and he soon becomes dog meat. After everything settles down, Taio receives a call and hurries to get back home. When Mutsumi asks him what's going on, he's unable to give a credible explanation, so Mutsumi tells him she understands. See ladies, this is what it means to be an understanding girlfriend. Mutsumi tells Taio to take them home, and this time, Goliath throws Taio on his back, and it seems he's taken a liking to him. When they get home, Ayaka accuses Taio of cheating again and tries to eliminate him. When she corners him, Ayaka shows Taio pictures of him with a lady in a cafeteria. Kyoichiro hears that and comes out again with another piece of torture equipment to bore Taio's brain. Suddenly, the lady in the picture steps in and introduces herself as Momiji, a member of Hinagiku. Apparently, she's come with a package which was initially supposed to be secret. Momiji decided to do it this way to avoid getting Taio in trouble, and Mutsumi soon learns the old man with them is the Kaoru that was calling Taio earlier. When the item is revealed, it turns out to be Dark Sweet, Mr. Kyoichiro's favorite tea. The ingredients are hard to come by, but Taio went high and low to secretly get the materials for Kyoichiro, who has always been looking out for him. When Kyoichiro realizes this boy did all this for him despite how much he hates him, he ties himself up with his own wires until he trips. Later on, he enjoys the tea but still refuses to apologize to Taio despite Mutsumi's protest. Because of that, Mutsumi tells Goliath to sit on him, since he'd rather die than apologize. Sometime later, Futaba fires Taio with a volleyball machine gun that's good for building reflexes. Although he tries to dodge, he's eventually pummeled. They soon go on a break and both find Mutsumi looking through a family album. Taio joins her and learns about when Nanao passed his spy license exam. Taio asks him what a spy license is, and learns that it's a membership card issued by the Spy Association. Apparently, an exam is held by the association yearly, and those who pass become members who are given a license. Once one has gotten this license, they're eligible to access intel, job referrals, and even a pension later on. The first rank is bronze, followed by silver, and then gold. Rising in rank allows one to be more lucrative and get advanced missions. Because of this, Taio decides to take the exam. When Kyoichiro hears this, he appears out of nowhere and informs Taio Taio that everyone in their family passed it on their first try. However, he warns Taio that failing it will bring shame to their family name, and he'd eliminate him if he did that. Meanwhile, Ayaka begs Shion for something, and it turns out she mistakenly touched Shion's cable while she was programming and caused it to glitch out. Suddenly, the monitor comes up, and something that looks like a ghost appears on the screen, surprising them. However, Futaba suddenly blanks out, and everyone except Taio realizes something wrong has happened again. Later, Futaba cowers under a blanket, so they explain that Futaba is scared of ghosts. Apparently, she's strong enough to fight anything else, but she's extremely afraid of ghosts since martial arts don't work on them. Apparently, she'll calm down the next day, so they have to watch her until the next day. While they're watching her, Futaba hears some weird noises in the wall that scare her, but the others tell her it must be the wind. Shion mentions that she's also been hearing weird noises from the wall too. For the rest of that day, the entire family is forced to keep babysitting Futaba. When Futaba is about to go to the bathroom, Shion joins her. When Taio turns on the TV, he mistakenly puts it on a channel about haunted ghosts, but Shinszo shoots the remote with alacrity. Later on, Kengo scares Futaba with an odd mask and he gets in trouble. Later on, while Mutsumi is working, Futaba becomes startled by the sounds in the walls again. Eventually, Futaba goes to sleep in Mutsumi's room, and Taio is tasked with the job of watching over them. Later on, Mutsumi reads a very gory story about death and war to Futaba as a bedtime story. Based on how soothing the story is, Mutsumi falls asleep immediately, just like a proper psycho. Futaba becomes scared, so Taio decides to continue the gory story. When Taio finishes the weird book, Futaba claps happily because it reminds her of when she was little. She solemnly admits that her mom used to read this book to her when she was younger, and she wasn't afraid back then. But when her mother passed away, she realized there are things beyond her no matter how much she trains. Futaba admits that the thought of losing the ones she loves bothers her so much, and she feels like a failure because she's trembling here because she feels powerless to protect them. When she's done talking, she thanks Taio for listening to her. Eventually, our boy admits he understands the helplessness that comes with losing those you love, but he explains that this helplessness is what drove him to want to become like them, and his words soothe Futaba. Before he leaves, she wishes him good luck in his exams. The next morning, Taio goes to have his spy exam and he does the third test, which is a tag running exercise. Mutsumi cheers him on, and our boy outruns the rest of them and comes in first. After the race, one of the other guys talks about how the Yozakura rookie lives up to the name. Later, the guy follows Taio around when he learns of the bounty on Taio's head. He moves in to pierce Taio, but some other participant named Hoshifuru intercepts him. Our boy thanks Hoshifuru for his help. Hoshifuru expresses romantic love towards him and his desire to run his tongue over his skin. At that point, Taio realizes this guy also wants to poke him, but from behind. Oddly, Mutsumi recognizes Hoshifuru as the #1 playboy spy in the world who knows how to flirt with any gender in the world. Taio holds Hoshifuru at gunpoint, but he only draws the gun closer and speaks sweet words to him. When Hoshifuru brings out his phone, he finds a small doll that Hoshifuru had made from Taio's hair and destroyed clothing. The organizers soon announce that it's time for the next level, where they have to escape from some chains while underwater. Taio successfully gets out, and Hoshifuru keeps hitting on him. In the next stage, a huge person chases Taio to smash him to bits, but Hoshifuru catches him while he's running, forcing Taio to expose his location. At level 6, they're supposed to disable a bomb, and several people blow themselves up while doing it. However, our boy clears the level at the nick of time. The next level is an actual exam, where they get ejected into the roof if they keep getting wrong answers. While Taio is struggling, Hoshifuru tries to show him his answers, but our boy ignores him. After the exhausting test, Hoshifuru tries to get him to rest on his arm, but Taio refuses. After the completion of the exam, those who pass are given their spy license, but they're told the building will soon explode so as to protect the secrecy of these exams. The examinees are forced to run to get their license, and some of them are caught by several traps. However, Taio and Hoshifuru keep going, and it's clear the organization gets too many applications. While running, the bounty hunter knocks Taio down, but Hoshifuru, who is attracted to Taio not giving up, uses his fan to send him forward while he falls into the water beneath. However, Taio refuses to let Hoshifuru fall but holds him while hanging on the edge. When the floor continues to crack, Hoshifuru tells him to let go, but Taio refuses to. Because of this, Hoshifuru uses his fan to get them back on the platform and tells Taio he's passed the exam. Hoshifuru later introduces himself as a silver rank spy, the chief examiner of this year's spy exam. Apparently, Hoshifuru was testing for much more than skills, which are the basics, but for humanity. Because of this, the bounty hunter is disqualified from the examination, and Hoshifuru gives Taio his license. Excited, Taio wonders if Hoshifuru's feelings were just an act, but he realizes those were actually true. When Hoshifuru asks for a celebratory hug, Taio jumps into the water instead. Back in the house, everyone celebrates Taio, and Kyoichiro suddenly collapses onto the ground from the roof. When the family asks him, Kyoichiro claims he was just trying to increase the security of the house, so he built secret rooms in the wall so he can watch her more. Futaba suddenly realizes he's also been the one making all the noise in the wall to scare her, so she decides to break some of his bones. In a flashback to the past, a man lies in the rain injured while police cars move around. He's suddenly approached by a woman who shades him from the train with her umbrella. In the present, Seiji goes to the prison and learns that a man named Ban has escaped. At the house, Ban appears in a small bag, and Taio can't believe his eyes. Ban crawls out of Taio's school bag and laments that the house is spatialized ID keeps getting reset, so he explains that he had to hide in the bag. Ban recognizes Taio as his new grandson and introduces himself as the grandfather of the Yozakura family. However, Taio shoots him with the electric gun, certain that he's an intruder. When Mutsumi shows up, she confirms he's their grandfather and Taio feels terrible. Mutsumi introduces the both of them and Ayaka soon brings him some hot towels. Excited to learn about their marriage, Ban hands the kids some money as their wedding gift and pocket money. Ban explains that he came all this way to see his lovely newlywed grandchildren and he drags Taio out for a fun outing with him. As Ban runs away with Taio, he's suddenly caught by Kyoichiro's wire and Kyoichiro asks him what he's doing here. Ban is surprised to see him and mentions that he thought he was out overseas for a mission. Kyoichiro admits that he was, but he came back on a mission to capture Ban, who had escaped. When Kyoichiro reveals that Ban is a convict, Ban protests that he was stationed in the prison to gather information about the underworld. However, Kyoichiro explains to them that Ban is a leak that will reveal secret information just to impress ladies, and that's why they don't let him out. When Kyoichiro claims Ban isn't fit to be called a pro, Ban tells him he's gotten cocky and reminds him he changed his diapers. With ease, Ban slips out of Kyoichiro's wires and tells Kyoichiro to stop him if he can. He soon triggers a gas release and escapes with Taio. Suddenly, Goliath brings Mutsumi an old picture. Later on, Kyoichiro calls Taio to inform him that Grandpa Ban has ridiculously flexible bones, allowing him to be able to escape any facility. However, because he's gotten so much information over the years, many people are after him and that's why he's locked up. Kyoichiro asks him to find a way to capture Ban, for his own sake. When Kyoichiro asks where they are, Taio laments that Ban is hitting on several women left and right. Suddenly, Ban decides to amuse the women by telling them a state secret. When Ban divulges so many secrets, Taio tries to catch him, but Ban slips out of his hands because he's ridiculously flexible. When Ban runs back to his seat, he realizes that Taio has put extreme glue on the seat, but that's not stopping this grandpa, who simply slips out of his clothes and jumps on the table. Ban tells Taio that only a beautiful woman can stop him, and he offers to give Taio some training. Taio tries to hit him several times but eventually passes out from exhaustion. To encourage him, Ban assures him he'll be able to graze him if he trains for 5 more years. Eventually, Taio asks Ban why he snuck out of the prison instead of just waiting to come see them when his mission is over. Ban insists that it has to be today but doesn't explain the actual reason. The bartender soon comes to pour them a drink that Ban recalls was his wife's favorite drink. When he offers Taio a drink, our boy reminds him he's underage. Ban tells him being a spy is about drinking, smoking, and enjoying women. He tells Taio he won't be able to give him a great grandchild by being a beta male and then goes ahead to explain how he used to make out with grandma just to give him some training. When Taio refuses, Ban censors the information and narrates how his wife, Keiko, had found him when he had no one else. He mentions that she was a fine woman and, with sadness in his eyes, adds that she was way too good for the likes of him. Because Taio also got married into the family just like he did, Ban brought him out here to share his experience. After giving him some advice, Ban tells him he wants them to be happy. Suddenly, Taio assures Ban that he'll live up to those words because Mutsumi is the one person that makes him happy, and he'll do all he can to make her feel the same. While they're chatting, a woman suddenly enters the bar and chains herself to Ban. The woman is Keiko and she tells Ban that the chain will explode if he tries to escape it by force, so Ban is forced to act properly. Mutsumi soon shows up and introduces Taio to Keiko. Meanwhile, Ban hugs Keiko with excitement and shows her her favorite drink. He suggests they go on a date, but Keiko tells him they have work to do and turns him into the police. Apparently, today was their anniversary, and that's the reason that Ban had broken out of prison. It also turns out that Mutsumi had overheard Taio speaking about how much she made him happy. In the present, she grabs his hand and the streets light up. Meanwhile, Keiko drives in the back of the police car with Ban. Later on, Ban cries his way into getting her to go on a date with him. Sometime later, Ban returns back to the house again after breaking out of prison again. He runs into Ayaka and learns that everyone has gone out on a monthly family shopping trip, so he decides to go too. At the mall, the siblings decide to split up after having lunch. When Kyoichiro is about to leave, Futaba tries to force him to pay for them all. He refuses, but when Mutsumi shows her puppy eyes, he requests the bill immediately. Later on, Taio and Mutsumi go to the mall. Mutsumi goes through a list that involves both foods and even hand grenades. Meanwhile, Rin brings her teammates to come see a scary movie because all work and no play isn't good. Shortly after, Mutsumi takes Taio to go play an arcade game and some hand grenades come out. Taio can't believe his eyes and wonders what grenades are looking for in a mall. Next up, Mutsumi goes to the attendant and requests something odd, which the attendant understands. It turns out what Mutsumi said were code words for guns and bullets. Eventually, Taio asks Mutsumi what kind of mall this is, so she explains that this mall serves spies and the underworld. Meanwhile, Shinszo and Shion go into the weapon shop. Shinszo struggles to choose his guns, so Shion just picks for him. While that's happening, Futaba gets a massage from her regular masseuse, who looks like she just left a heavy lifting career. Meanwhile, Nanao and Kengo also do their own shopping. While that's happening, Kyoichiro enters a secret library and meets a woman who gives him a book. Kyoichiro laughs in excitement, and it turns out the library is said to contain the most horrifying books from all over the world. Meanwhile, Taio decides to bulletproof one of his shirts. He soon runs into a random girl who grabs him while he's walking through the mall. Unsure of what to do, he takes her to Mutsumi and explains that it seems she's been separated from her dad. When Mutsumi asks the girl about her father, she says that the scary people took her father downstairs. Mutsumi Mutsumi realizes what has happened and leads them to a basement floor where they sell things too terrible for the previous floors. The place looks like a hood, and Mutsumi tells them to be careful or they'll end up becoming a product. Suddenly, they find the girl's father being pushed against a wall as a man threatens to harvest his organs as repayment for what he owes him. Taio shoots down the attacker and reunites the girl with her father. As they try to leave, the people on the floor surround Taio because of the $500,000 bounty on his head. As they rush to attack him, the men are all disposed of by Kyoichiro, who soon comes to save them. The guys realize they can't fight Kyoichiro, but their boss urges them that they have numbers on their side. However, the men soon experience the shock of their lives when the other siblings show up and destroy the whole place. The building starts to sink, but Rin and Oga think it's the realistic nature of the 4D movie they're watching until Sui tells them the building is sinking. In a flashback to when Taio's parents passed away, Taio shows his little brother a cool video game while their parents ride in the front seat. Taio's dad had decided to take his family camping because he's finally got time off from his busy schedule. While they're driving, the car suddenly skids off the road, and that's how it all happened. In the present, Taio wakes up from the ghastly dream. Later on, Shion informs him that she was able to decode the drive he gave her. Apparently, it contains a wedding guest list for the wedding of their parents. The odd thing they notice is that Taio's parents' names are on the list, which means there was a connection between his family and the Yozakura. Taio recalls what Kurogao had told him, but Mutsumi starts to cry because she wants to get a divorce. She's afraid that the death of Taio's parents is their family's fault, but Taio tells her they can't jump to conclusions. He tells her that he's who he is because of her, but Shion tells them to get a room. However, Taio asks for their help with digging deeper into this, and Shion wonders if he had expected her to do anything different. However, because most of the information on the previous Yozakura head has been wiped out, she suggests that they continue their investigation at a place called the Library of the Dead, where the information about dead spies is kept. The next day, Taio enters the library and uses his card to get in. While inside, Taio finds other spies going through records in the library. He notices one other guy who's making noise because he found a record of how a lame spy once died. Immediately, the librarian, Mekan, eliminates him by piercing his brain because he's disturbing the peace of the library. Apparently, her job is to penalize people based on how much noise they make in the library, because Taio can't defeat her since he's silver rank. Shion reminds him to ensure he makes no noise. While she patrols, Taio tries his best to sneak around silently, while Mekan takes out another man because his face looks noisy. While he's looking around, some other guys are eliminated for closing the book too loudly and another guy for coughing. Taio almost drops a book, and everyone around him shrieks in fear. Eventually, Taio finds a book that has his parents' names on it. The book contains his family details and nothing else, but he finds a slot for optical devices. He tries the pearl with him and finds out it's a key to the real content in the book. The records show that all members of his family were exterminated by an organization called Tanpopo, and the book suddenly explodes because Taio shouldn't have the book. Shocked, Shion tells him to get away because Mekan will certainly eliminate him. Before he can move out of the way, Mekan slices at him, but he manages to lie down. With Shion's help, she shows him a socket to fire it that turns off the lights in the building. Before the backup generator starts, she leads him towards the exit, but Mekan tracks him down again. She still tracks him down in the dark and attempts to join him to her collection, but Mutsumi suddenly tells Taio to point his headphones at Mekan. He does it, and Mutsumi sends a loud noise out of it that knocks Mekan down since she can't stand loud noise. When Taio gets back home, he relays the information to Kyoichiro, who places some weights on him. Suddenly, Kyoichiro explains that the previous head, Rei, was eliminated by this group called Tanpopo. Kyoichiro explains that he's been trying to track them down to no avail, but he knows they're targeting Mutsumi. However, with his new information, Kyoichiro was able to link Tanpopo to Taio's father, who worked in the medical industry. Because of that, he was able to learn that 15 other people were eliminated from the medical field around when Taio's family passed away. However, all these people seem to be linked to a medical director named Kawashita. To investigate further, Kyoichiro sends Mutsumi and Taio into the Kawashita medical clinic, with Taio being disguised as an old patient named Kusei. Mutsumi also conceals herself by disguising herself as the old man's wife. Later on, they join the waiting list. When Taio laments, Mutsumi realizes that Kyoichiro had put weights around Taio's body to slow down his movements and make him like an old man. Taio and Mutsumi are soon called in to see director Kawashita, who does a checkup on Taio's old form. After the checkup, Taio is given a bed while Mutsumi feeds him. Meanwhile, he wonders how a doctor that seems so genuine can be involved in wrong things. Later that night, Kawashita heads out of the center and greets his worker goodbye. When he walks past Taio's room, our boy sneaks out and enters into his office to go through his computer. Although it seems like a normal computer, Taio uses a program Shion gave him to reveal the encrypted data and finds a project called the Some Yoshino Project that has to do with the Yozakura family. The document highlights that a specific protein is found in the blood of the head of the family, and this is the source of the family's enhanced 5 abilities. Since it can also work when ingested by someone outside of the family, the blood of the head is useful for the creation of an artificial agent. The issue is that this protein cannot be created artificially, so these people plan to get Mutsumi's heart as a factory that will keep supplying them blood. While Taio is looking through the computer, he's suddenly suddenly ambushed by Kawashita, who slices up his mask while trying to harm him. Kawashita recognizes Taio and mentions that he heard that he was alive. Taio asks him if he eliminated Mutsumi's mother and his family, but Kawashita doesn't answer him. Kawashita tells him that they have no chance of stopping them, and Taio sees the crest of the Tanpopo group on his neck. Kawashita tries to stab Taio, but his bulletproof cloth helps him. Eventually, Taio kicks the man away and shoots his gun at him, but the electricity doesn't affect him. Eventually, Kawashita triggers an outburst of light and escapes with the computer. Luckily, Taio had extracted the data to a flash drive earlier, and he plans to do everything he can to protect Mutsumi from this group. Sometime later, Mutsumi finds herself in a burning community while in the hands of an old man. The man asks her to forgive him, but she says nothing. It turns out to be a dream, and Mutsumi soon wakes up. A moment later, she walks around the house. Meanwhile, Taio checks through the data he copied to find information about Tanpopo. After checking for a long time, he finds a receipt about a hotel named Dandelion and realizes Dandelion is the English word for Tanpopo. Meanwhile, Kawashita makes a call to inform his partners that he ran into a groom of someone in the Yozakura. He mentions looking for another opportunity to try something out. Suddenly, he gets a knock on his door, which turns out to be a fellow named Noman. The next morning, Taio wakes up on a boat in the middle of the ocean. He screams due to shock, but later finds Kyoichiro fishing by the side of the boat. When he demands to know what's going on, Kyoichiro suggests that he wanted them to bond man to man. Eventually, Taio is forced to join him fishing. Taio successfully catches a fish, and Kyoichiro keeps praising him, which Taio finds odd. Taio realizes there must be a catch and is certain Kyoichiro wants to feed him to the sharks eventually. Kyoichiro notices he's suspicious and tells him he's just trying to help train him. Eventually, Taio pulls out an assassin in a scuba suit that starts shooting at him. He's forced to dodge bullets until he finally takes out the man. Moments after, Kyoichiro explains that this is a special training they all do. Apparently, Kyoichiro had sent out flyers with Taio's face to these assassins and they're going to try to eliminate him. While Taio fights, Kyoichiro reminds Taio he's in bronze rank, which all the siblings had reached when they were quite young. He believes that he should be able to clear this easily if he's truly a bronze rank, since this activity is ranked 1 star of the bronze rank. However, Taio decides to prove his strength and keeps fighting the men. Little does he know that a torpedo is also coming and it smashes into the boat, knocking everyone into the water. Eventually, Taio comes out and saves one of the men that was trying to eliminate him. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro floats in a balloon. Taio eventually finds a cloth that has the crest of the Tanpopo group, so Kyoichiro explains that this route is part of Tanpopo's smuggling route, so there's a rumor that they put an unmanned gun that fires torpedoes at anyone who comes too close. Kyoichiro used this experience to confirm the rumor. Eventually, Kyoichiro asks Taio if he knows what it means to take on Tanpopo. Apparently, he'd have to deal with a global criminal organization with a government-level military network. It'd take a 5-star gold rank to even attempt such a mission, so Kyoichiro tells Taio he can't handle it with his bronze rank. He offers our boy a chance to quit, but Taio refuses because that's not an option, as long as they're targeting Mutsumi. Upon hearing that, Kyoichiro is glad they're on the same page. Using his wire, Kyoichiro grabs Taio and throws him into another part of the ocean where a torpedo from a Tanpopo submarine targets him. Taio uses the wire with him to grab the torpedo, but it drags him away with great speed. Immediately, Kyoichiro calls him and informs him that the torpedo is heading for where they are, and he'll be unhurt, but the other men here will be blown to bits. Kyoichiro reminds him he's a professional spy and gives him the responsibility of handling the situation. Taio drags himself towards the warhead of the torpedo system to reach the guidance system, just like Kyoichiro had told him. Once he opens it, he remembers Shion's guidance on how to disarm missiles. While he does that, the other men run for their lives, but Kyoichiro watches the whole thing like he's in a cinema. Taio does all he knows and eventually manages to redirect the torpedo upwards till it stops. After completing it, the men who are trying to eliminate Taio praise him because he's awesome, and they apologize for having tried to eliminate him. Meanwhile, those controlling the submarine are unable to confirm its detonation. As they're about to send another one, an unidentified object rushes towards them, and it turns out to be Kyoichiro, who had redirected the torpedo at them. However, he doesn't destroy them with the torpedo, but gets close enough to slice up the submarine with his wires. When they float to the surface, Kyoichiro tells Taio that he's now performing like a level 2 bronze. Suddenly, Kyoichiro confirms what Taio learned about Hotel Dandelion and gives him the exact room where he'll find Kawashita based on information he received from Seiji. Later on, Taio heads to the hotel and learns that Kyoichiro is sending Shinszo to come meet him. Meanwhile, Shinszo rides in the train, but he doesn't leave his basket. Crazy guy. Kyoichiro explains to Taio that Tanpopo set up base in a public place because they're confident they can counterattack, so he sends Shinszo as support. When they end the call, Futaba corners Kyoichiro and asks him why he's dragging Taio into this. Kyoichiro explains that this is because Taio's family was hurt and there's no other reason. However, Futaba isn't certain that's all there is to it. At the hotel, Taio tries to get to the suite floor, but a hand suddenly comes out to punch him out of the elevator. Surprised, another worker explains to him that he can't reach the suite from the elevator because there's a facial recognition system in place. Instead, Taio tries to climb to the suite floor, but when he reaches the 40th floor, some gold digger who's angry with her sugar daddy keeps throwing things at the glass wall. The vase she throws cracks the glass wall, and and knocks our boy into the pool 40 floors down. The guys by the pool thought Taio made a sick dive, but our boy was certain this was his last mission. When he gets out of the pool, he hears a rich woman tell her attendant to bring her dog to the suite floor when she wakes up. Meanwhile, Noman, the owner of the establishment, learns of a suspicious employee again and tells him to detain him because he could be a spy. When he ends the call, he asks Kawashita if he's done something stupid again. Oddly, Kawashita gives him a cute cloth he sewed for him, but Noman refuses to take it because it's lame. Shortly after, Kawashita gives Noman an improved version of his drug with fewer side effects, but Noman refuses to take it because he says the last one had no side effects either. While they're talking, a dog carrying an electric gun holds them at gunpoint, and they look at it in confusion. From the voice, Kawashita recognizes that it's Taio, so our boy removes his cover. However, a helicopter appears near the window, and Noman breaks the glass wall with his hands, allowing Kawashita to escape. Noman faces Taio with great speed and strength, so much so that Taio has a hard time. Before he leaves, Kawashita hears Noman calling Taio cute, so he tells him not to diddle the poor boy. When he leaves, Noman brings out the doping agent that Kawashita gave him that's called Yozakura. Apparently, Yozakura mimics the Yozakura blood and gives superpowers, so Noman uses it there. Once he does, he bulges up and grows veins everywhere. His clothes tear except his trousers because this show is PG-13. Taio tries to shoot him, but Noman crushes his gun with his bare hands and punches him into the wall. Meanwhile, Kawashita reports to his team that Taio showed up again, but he informs them that he's moving on to the next step. While that's going on, someone appears on the ground floor of the hotel. On the suite floor, Taio had managed to stick a blade in Noman before he punched him, but Noman pulls it out and it heals immediately. Noman explains that Yozakura can replicate various Yozakura powers at once. He goes forward to grab Taio's neck and begins to squeeze, but a basket suddenly appears from the floor. Suddenly, a cannon comes out of the basket and blasts Noman through the wall. After that, Shinszo comes out looking like Rambo and he apologizes to Taio for being late. In a flashback, Shion informs Taio that the optical storage he got from Kurogao contains a wedding list that has his parents' names on it. After that time, Taio realized it wasn't an accident, and he soon learned from Kyoichiro that the previous head of the family was also killed by Tanpopo. That's what led him to find out about the drug Summonine that the Tanpopo want to mass produce from the blood they get from Mutsumi's heart. However, they've managed to replicate something inferior called Yozakura. This stuff is so strong that even Noman's eyes have muscles now. Not long after, Shinszo shows up just before Noman cracks Taio's neck and blasts him away. After that, Shinszo comes out in Rambo style. In the present, Noman recognizes Shinszo as a gold-ranked spy. He comes out with a weird look in his eyes and tells Shinszo he's cute. When Noman's wounds heal, Shinszo realizes Noman has something similar to Nanao's regenerative abilities, so he brings out a whole lot more guns and lets loose. After firing a whole armory into his body, Shinszo drops the guns and holds a pistol. He soon walks up to Taio, then throws him out the window after he pins a parachute system to his body. Through the comms, Shinszo tells Taio to leave things to him because enemy reinforcements could be on the way. Suddenly, Noman comes close and punches Shinszo, but he's able to block it with his hands. Noman finds it intriguing that Shinszo has enough strength to compete with him, but he informs him he has a switch in his tooth that can trigger a bomb that will eliminate everyone in the hotel. Using the people as hostages, Noman convinces Shinszo to back down and punches him in the face. The weight of the punches is so strong that the entire building shakes. Noman keeps punching Shinszo until he covers his hands with blood, but he admits that Shinszo has endurance. However, Shinszo explains he's not enduring but only waiting. Suddenly, Noman receives a call from the front desk that someone is destroying the entire place. It turns out to be Taio, who is shooting bullets everywhere, and he looks like he's finally lost his mind. Apparently, Shinszo had once told him to do whatever it takes to save the lives of others. In the present, he licks guns like lollipops and throws grenades around to escort the people to heaven. Everyone runs around frantically and they soon empty the building shortly. While the people are running, the strange person who stood in front of the building walks in. Meanwhile, Noman learns that everyone has evacuated the building. In response, Shinszo punches Noman and promises to make him eat his words that such an inferior power is comparable to that of the Yozakura. When Noman becomes cocky, Shinszo brings out a huge electric gun that only he can fire in the family because of its great power. Regardless, Noman asks him if he thinks it'll work on him and promises to escape. Noman triggers his explosion to escape but soon learns that Taio has hacked into his cameras and detonator. Shinszo tells Noman he lost because he overlooked his little brother and fires a huge electric bolt at him that affects even the weather and tears the walls open. After Noman collapses, Kawashita realizes the fake doping agent won't cut it, but he's glad he was able to get some information from Noman. He plans to leave the rest of the work to the real deal, the strange person walking into the building. Meanwhile, Shinszo is glad to see Noman collapse because he was scared. Taio congratulates him for a job well done, but he suddenly runs into a strange person whose presence he didn't sense. The man asks if he's okay and walks past him, but it confuses Taio that someone remained in the hotel. The man tells Taio to take care of his body so he can protect the person he wants to protect, and the man seems to be wearing a strange ring that seems like something from the Yozakura. Suddenly, Shinszo appears and notices several blood spots on Taio's body. Taio himself didn't realize it until he suddenly collapsed in a pool of blood. Later on, Taio is rushed to Nanao's lab. Nanao explains that Taio's body was shot more than a dozen times, and he would have died if he hadn't been been brought early enough. Mutsumi holds his hand, and Nanao explains that Taio won't regain consciousness for a while. Despite the mood, Kyoichiro draws funny things on Taio's face with a marker, but Futaba knocks out his lights and they send him out of the infirmary. Shortly after, everyone leaves. Mutsumi is with Taio, and Nanao leaves her a medical box to help him. While they're alone, Mutsumi sees a picture of her and her mother, and that brings back painful memories. Later, Shinszo goes to meet Kyoichiro to discuss something. Shinszo explains that he noticed Taio suddenly drenched in blood, but the issue is that his keen hearing never misses the sounds of snipers or silencers. He also didn't notice a presence or anything, which makes him think that someone attacked him before he got there, but his body delayed the reaction. Shinszo mentions that there's only one person he knows that is capable of that, and a silence lingers. Suddenly, a clock is activated in the house, and the siblings realize their home has been intruded upon. However, from the sound of the alarm, it shows that over 1,000 people have infiltrated their house. Outside the house, several people armed to the teeth prepare to fight, and they all seem to have been Hazakura. When one of them itches to fight, another one of them named Yama almost crushes his head and reminds him to follow orders. Meanwhile, Kawashita communicates with Yama about how those under his command are those compatible with Hazakura. Apparently, they had lured Shinszo to learn that a Yozakura can be taken out on his own. The injury on Taio was also to make them gather in the house at once so they can take out all of them and retrieve Mutsumi. The battalion soon breaches their security, and Futaba realizes that their guests seem to have gotten their security codes from someone else. As the men rush in, they run into Goliath, who stands guard at the front door, and they're forced to stop. Goliath stands against the men and transforms into a huge wolf that towers over the men. Immediately, Goliath starts to tear through the men, and the destruction is seen from miles away. After the dust clears, Yama tells the other men not to panic that this is a monster because it's just a guard dog and the real monsters are about to show up. When the siblings show up, Futaba asks the men to turn back because they have a sick person in their custody, but the men don't budge. After some hesitation, Futaba orders the siblings to move, and they go in. Nanao releases his humongous hand and slams men around, while Kengo duplicates himself. Meanwhile, Shion uses a satellite to fire shots at the men, as well as some drones. Shinszo also summons his basket to fire the men while he cuts them up with his knife. While that's happening, just the force of Futaba's movements knocks down the men around her, but she notices that the men get up immediately. Normally, her force knocks men out for a full day, and Shion also notices her bullets aren't taking the men down. Eventually, Futaba decides to go hand to hand, but Yama tells his men to remain calm. He orders one unit to divert the siblings while the other attacks the house. The second unit rushes to the house, but they find Kyoichiro there. The men rush forward, but they are soon caught by wires that Kyoichiro set up. He finds it demeaning that they'd send such people against him, so he orders Goliath to destroy the rest of them. The men realize they're in trouble and cry to Yama, so Yama decides to deal with it. Apparently, most people only have 3% compatibility with Hazakura, and even Nomen only had 10% compatibility. Somehow, Yama seems to have access to up to 60%, so he launches an attack against Goliath with an overgrown arm, knocking him into the building. Because Kyoichiro didn't want Goliath caught in the wires he put up, he was forced to deactivate them, and that allowed Yama to get into the mansion, which was Yama's plan all along. Suddenly, Kyoichiro finds out that they've intercepted their comms, but it seems like someone from inside did it. As if that's not enough, the man that harmed Taio activates the hibernation sequence of the house, and that locks the siblings out, leaving Yama inside. Immediately, Futaba rushes to meet Kyoichiro because she recognizes the voice that activated the hibernation. Kyoichiro tells her not to panic because they're not out to eliminate Mutsumi. But, since they can only deactivate hibernation using the ring of the head, Kyoichiro heads out to go take the ring of the previous head of the house from him. Meanwhile, Mutsumi remains by Taio's side, but a sudden blackout occurs. She knows the infirmary should have backup power and wonders what is happening. It turns out that Yama has gone to tamper with the electricity box, and Mutsumi is unable to reach out to Nanao, so she realizes they've cut their communication. Immediately, Taio's pulse becomes weaker, and she realizes that Taio will die if she does nothing. While that's happening, Kyoichiro strolls to where the previous head is. When he finds him, he recognizes the ring that the man shared with the 9th head, which also gives him the right of hibernation. Kyoichiro looks his own father in the face and tells him he has no right to that ring. Inside the house, Mutsumi realizes she can't leave, but also knows she has to do something. When she sees the picture of her mother again, she goes to check the drawer close by until she finds a needle she was looking for. After tying her hand, she tries to extract her own blood. Mutsumi flashes back to a time when her mother told her the blood in her veins has a special power. According to her mother, that power allows her to do evil things or good things. Her mother simply told her to ensure that she uses this power only for someone she cares about and ensure she'd be able to accept the suffering that comes to them after it. In the present, she extracts her blood and feeds it into Taio's veins, hoping that it'd work. Regardless, Taio's temperature and pulse keep going down as she wishes to be able to save him for once since he's always saving her. As tears stream down her face, she begs him not to leave her, but nothing happens. Suddenly, Yama enters the room and jumps towards Mutsumi to capture her. Before he can grab her, Taio drags Mutsumi away and cuts him in his hand. This time, Taio has an unnatural pink glow in his eyes, and he fires his gun at Yama, pushing him backwards. Yama wonders if Taio has become what he's suspecting, so he tries to attack him, but our boy kicks him through the wall. Even Taio doesn't understand how he's doing this, but he goes towards Yama to fight again. Yama tries to punch him, him, but our boy notices that his body feels so light and Yama's movement seems so slow to him that he can spot his neck movements. With one punch, he knocks him backwards through the hall. Suddenly, Taio feels a tinge of pain and stops fighting. Yama senses that he has received Yozakura blood, so he tells him that the summonine is activating all his cells and destroying the brain's processing power. Apparently, half of them die after taking Hazakura, which is inferior, so he knows Taio can either master this or die. As Taio feels more pain, Mutsumi comes to his side and tells him to calm down. She tells him to focus his senses, but Taio tries to get her to run. Regardless, Mutsumi refuses to leave and informs him that she won't let them use her heart for evil. She points a gun at her chest and tells Taio that they die together if they have to. She helps him slow down his breathing and focus only on her voice, and when he does that, Taio is able to sense the summonine flowing through his body. Suddenly, he achieves some bliss and opens his eyes, but Yama soon throws Mutsumi away and tells her it's pointless. Taio tries to help her, but he collapses from the pain. Immediately, Yama punches Taio with all his strength, but Taio catches his hand in midair and tells him he can see him. Suddenly, Taio punches him in the stomach and a bright light pours out of his hands. The force of the punch is so strong that it tears through Yama's stomach, causing him to be unable to regenerate. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro tells his father to give back the ring, but the old man simply tells him he's glad to see he looks well. He points out that everyone seems to be doing well and mentions that Taio seems to have awakened too. The old man confesses that he's proud of his kids and begins to make small talk, but Kyoichiro stops him. Kyoichiro asks his father why he went as far as using Tanpopo to make Taio stronger. He knows that Mutsumi would have never resorted to using her blood if such a thing had never happened, so his father created such a crisis. He knows his father dealt such a fatal blow to Taio without intending to eliminate him and planned everything to push Mutsumi to the edge until she had to gamble on Taio being compatible with the blood. Kyoichiro wonders why he dragged everyone into his plot and deceived them, so the previous head explains that he wants Taio to be a strong husband so he can protect his daughter. Intrigued, the man asks Kyoichiro why he's fixated on Taio and asks if he likes him, so Kyoichiro states that there's no such thing, but he hoped Taio had died. Immediately, Kyoichiro's father heads off and apologizes for Goliath. However, Kyoichiro considers his father arrogant and inconsiderate of his family's feelings, so he creates a bloody wire known as Calm Storm and releases it towards his father. The wires destroy everyone around and bring down the area. Meanwhile, Taio comes back to normal and Mutsumi hugs him with tears in her eyes, begging him not to die. She laments that the blood is killing him, but Taio hugs her and thanks her for saving him. Suddenly, Shion rejoices because she's been able to restore communication and finds out that Taio and Mutsumi are fine. When Futaba learns that they're fine, she decides it's time to clean things up. Shion goes first and guides Kengo along the shortest route to capture the entire battalion. Kengo transforms himself into Mutsumi and lures most of the battalion after him until he reaches where Nanao is. The men are glad they found Mutsumi, but Nanao uses his huge hand to crack the ground underneath them, causing the men to fall into a ditch. Next up, Shinszo covers the ground with an impenetrable ball and seals the men in. After that, Futaba swirls the ball around with great force and ejects them with all her power until she launches them into the sky. In the yard, Kyoichiro's father commends his strength, but he reminds him that he was the one who taught him everything he knows, so he's still out of his league. The man tells him to see his father off like a good son, but Kyoichiro insists that he can't leave with the ring. When his dad notices he won't budge, he lets Kyoichiro have the ring and leaves. The siblings soon deactivate the hibernation sequence and Shinszo hugs Taio half to death because he feels it was his fault. When Kyoichiro returns, he finds the siblings tying down Taio. He's glad to see them in one piece, so he suggests they go in to have some tea. Meanwhile, Taio seems to have gone into some sort of induced hyperactivity, so Kyoichiro tells him that the summonine has activated all his cells and it's hard to control. Kyoichiro finds it cute and thinks of the good old times when they also used to go berserk from time to time. Eventually, Taio pushes all the siblings off him, but Kyoichiro subdues him. Until he learns to control himself, Kyoichiro puts headphones on Taio and attempts to short-circuit his processing power with sound. When he gives Mutsumi the mic and asks her to sing a song, the other siblings panic that there has to be another way out of this. When Kyoichiro insists it's the only way, Futaba accuses Kyoichiro of doing this to hear Mutsumi's voice. However, Mutsumi decides to sing to save Taio, and it's so bad that even the nearby birds fall out of the sky. But it also works on Taio, and he comes back to normal. Taio can't remember anything, so he complains that it sounded like the world was coming to an end, so he doesn't know she has a terrible voice. Mutsumi tells him that it was all a dream. Sometime later, Taio wakes up and feels pain in the hand that he used to punch Nomin. He goes to the mirror to check his eyes, and they suddenly turn pink again. Downstairs, Nanao informs Mutsumi that he found a recipe for reducing the exhaustion brought on by the Yozakura blood, which gladdens Mutsumi. Taio soon steps out, even though the siblings think he should still be resting. He insists that he's fine, but he feels a torrent of pain when he tries to stretch again. Taio asks why he can't leave home, so Mutsumi says they want him to stay home because there's no way to know what will happen if he steps out. Regardless, Taio explains that he can't take too much time off school, so it won't look weird. Because of that, Mutsumi suggests that Nanao follow him to school for that day. Taio tries to convince Mutsumi that Nanao shouldn't follow him because of his size, but Mutsumi mentions that it seems he's never seen the real Nanao. Suddenly, Nanao injects himself with something and starts to shrink until he becomes a young silver-haired boy. Nanao Nanao thinks he shrunk himself too much, but Taio wonders who the heck he's looking at. On their way to school, Taio can't stop staring at Nanao, so Nanao explains that his skill is called immunity. He has a unique body that can neutralize poison and enhance itself physically, but he usually has to keep it slightly mutated to be able to control it. Apparently, he invented a drug to forcibly suppress the mutation for when he has to go to school. Suddenly, a strange mutation swelling appears on Nanao's face, but Nanao pushes it back inside. When they reach school, some of the guys recognize Nanao immediately and they give him copies of their notes, which they had made for him. At the house, Kengo and Shion sense a terrible smell from the kitchen, where Mutsumi is making something and they're half certain she's trying to poison someone. At school, Taio suddenly receives a call from Nanao, who asks him to hurry to the biology lab. When he gets there, our boy finds Nanao in one of the rooms with a huge mutation growing from his back. Nanao explains to him that he's not feeling too well and asks him to inject him with any of the syringes he brought with him. Once Taio does that, the swelling disappears completely, so Nanao thanks him. While they're talking, a girl named Kitasato enters the room and asks Nanao if he's alright. She seems concerned and crouches close to Nanao to check if he has a fever. When she touches her face with his to check, Nanao starts to blush and almost explodes. Suddenly, she notices his temperature start to spike and tells him to get that checked out, unaware she was the cause. As she walks away, Taio wonders if he's invisible since Kitasato didn't regard him at all. Eventually, Nanao explains that Kitasato is his classmate and president of the biology club. Apparently, she has no interest in humans or mammals, so Nanao tells him not to worry. Shortly after, Nanao retrieves a stack of meds and starts to snack on them like popcorn. Regardless, he experiences a sudden mutation in his face and collapses, but he tries to calm himself. When they talk, Nanao expresses how he likes to think he's a normal human being, but he eventually admits that he thinks he's fooled himself for too long. He brings out a vaccine that can permanently mutate him so he doesn't have to experience an unstable body, so he plans to use it even though that means he can never come to school again. Taio remembers how much fun Nanao has had in school, so he stops Nanao from taking the vaccine. Tears flow down Taio's eyes, and he explains that he's just realized how much of an ordeal Nanao is going through. He asks Nanao to hold out on using the drugs and pleads with him to preserve this form, so Nanao agrees. Later on, Nanao reads something in class, and when his hand mutates suddenly, Taio fires a med at his hand to stop it. When the teacher looks up, he's surprised to find out that the clothes around Nanao's hand are torn. When Nanao steps out to change, he finds Taio with a gun he used to shoot the drug. During practice, Nanao's hand mutates again, allowing him to throw really well, but Taio fires at him from a place he's hiding. Later, Kitasato goes to have lunch and her pet lunch swallows one of Nanao's meds, causing it to mutate into a huge monster. Meanwhile, Rin and Futaba have a drink, and they talk about how they have to renovate the Yozakura mansion because of the recent destruction. When Rin finds out Tanpopo was behind this, she promises to do some digging on her end. Shortly after, Shinszo brings out some food Mutsumi made for them, and Oga excitedly takes it. Meanwhile, Taio does some acupuncture on Nanao, just like Ayaka had suggested to him. Nanao is glad his big brother is protecting him and hopes that he might be able to come to school a bit longer. Suddenly, they hear a noise from the biology lab and rush to find out that all the animals have been let out. Inside, they find Kitasato unconscious, but Nanao notices one of the scales of her pet snake, Basilisk. He notices it's been mutated, and he realizes the snake must have had access to his medicine. Nanao begins to blame himself, but Kitasato wakes up and frantically begins to look for Basilisk. When she wakes up, she explains that Basilisk had a pain in her face, so she rushed to save him. Taio asks Nanao to go help Kitasato while he battles with the other escaped animals. Nanao accompanies Kitasato to a dark environment she knows Basilisk will like, so she brings out some rats to lure him out. While they go through, Nanao notices himself mutating slightly, which means the environment is conducive to cell mutation. This means Basilisk must be getting worse, and Basilisk soon attacks Kitasato. Nanao manages to get her out of the way, and when he attacks again, Nanao pulls her towards a nearby exit. Shortly after, they're cornered by the monster, so Nanao walks towards Basilisk and thanks Kitasato for everything. Nanao lets Basilisk bite his mutated hand because he knows his cells will neutralize the medicine, but that forces him to expose his true nature to Kitasato. Shortly after, Taio carries Nanao to the roof after he collapses. They laugh at the situation a bit, but Nanao's mutation starts to increase. Eventually, he brings out the permanent vaccine, so he plans to use it, especially since Kitasato has seen him like this. When Taio protests, Nanao thanks him and pushes him into the nearby railing. Nanao apologizes because the mutation is taking over him and he only meant to brush him off slightly. Nanao immediately tries to stab himself, but Taio puts his hand in the way and allows Nanao to stab his hand. Taio tells Nanao not to worry and asks him to repeat the chants he normally uses to calm himself down in these situations, and Nanao begins to relax slightly. When he returns to normal, Taio assures him he's still a human little brother and urges him not to give up. Suddenly, Kitasato appears on the roof, scaring the two of them. When they ask her how long she's been there, they realize she's been here since they got there. Regardless, Kitasato mentions that it's intriguing that Nanao is capable of metamorphosis. When Kitasato mentions that she saw Taio in the club, he has no excuse to give, so she decides to fill out a form for him so he can join the biology club. But before she leaves, she asks Nanao not to quit the club because she doesn't know what to do without a friend to help her. Eventually, they get home and both of them find the siblings foaming at the mouth except Rin, because Mutsumi was trying out the recipe to help Taio reduce reduce his hyperactivity. Apparently, it makes everyone black out, except Rin, who seems to never be able to be tired. Days after, Taio duels with Shinszo and activates his eye again. The eye allows him to move with great speed and strength while they fight, but Taio still stumbles during the fight, allowing Shinszo to finish him off. After checking on him, Shinszo tells him that swordsmanship is all about balance, and he needs to focus on all his 5 senses instead of just his eyes and hands, which summon 9 targets. Shinszo does a demonstration with great speed and ends up destroying his wooden sword. Suddenly, Kyoichiro points out that there's more to the Yozakura strength than the power of their blood. He tells Taio that it's what they yield the power for that makes the Yozakura so strong. Eventually, Kyoichiro heads out overseas to take on a mission from the association. Before Kyoichiro leaves, Mutsumi runs excitedly and calls out to Taio. Kyoichiro tries to hug her and asks her if she missed him so much, but Mutsumi leaves him hanging and breaks his little heart. Mutsumi runs to tell Taio that she won a one-night access to a place known as the Endless Hell Hot Springs. Apparently, it's a resort place of the underworld, and it's only based on invitation. When they return home, Kyoichiro crouches in a dark place, and Taio tries to get Mutsumi to do something. Mutsumi explains that tomorrow is the only day everyone is free, and Kyoichiro can't come because he has to go on a mission. However, Kyoichiro suggests just ditching the stupid mission, so Futaba kicks him in the head and throws him his suitcase. Kyoichiro starts to lament that he's been treated unfairly and he has to protect Mutsumi, but Futaba doesn't hear any of it. Eventually, Mutsumi apologizes for the problem and wishes Kyoichiro luck on his mission, and that gives Kyoichiro the drive to run out to his mission in excitement. Before he leaves the house, Kyoichiro runs back inside and warns Taio not to think of bathing with Mutsumi because he's going to do more than rip him to shreds. Shortly after, they head out to the location on a bus. During the journey, Nanao throws up all the organic medicine he created in his body, and Shinszo worries that they're going in the wrong direction. Regardless, Shinszo tells him to keep going until they eventually end up in a lake. Luckily, the bus can also serve as a submarine, so Shion explains that they can't reach where they're going through normal means. They make their way through a huge cave in the seabed until they finally come out in the resort. When they get there, Taio notices everyone in the resort are spies and criminals, but the others assure him that there's a rule that doesn't allow them to fight each other in the inn. Soon after, some guys become worried that the Yozakura are here, and the siblings recognize that they're from a group that Kyoichiro scattered. Suddenly, the siblings and the men are forced into a face-off, but a woman named Emma stops the fight. She immediately reminds the men not to forget the rules of the inn and suggests they soak in their baths to wash away their hatred instead. Futaba greets Emma, who asks about Kyoichiro. She also learns about Taio and guides them to various rooms based on gender. When they get in, Shinszo and Kengo run to the chairs by the window and call dibs. Nanao explains that it's a Yozakura custom to do that, and Nanao uses his puppy eyes to get Shinszo to get him to stand up. When Taio also remembers how his little brother used to like sitting by the window, Kengo is forced to relinquish his seat. Later, Kengo tries to put some steamy stuff on the pay channel, so Shinszo stops him and covers Nanao's eyes. Meanwhile, in the ladies' room, Futaba asks Mutsumi if she's going to tell Taio about a secret. She assures Mutsumi that there's nothing to worry about because Taio will accept it. Later that night, Taio and the rest enter the sauna for a heat endurance test. After 10 minutes, most of them look like they're about to pass out except for Shinszo, who claims he's not done. When Nanao realizes he might die, he switches to his mutated body and is able to survive, leaving the others grilled. Later, the women explore the rest of the resort and have some fun while Shinszo does some shooting. Moments later, they all go have dinner, but the man from before blames the Yozakura for breaking up their organization. When Futaba calls him a wuss, the man pours his beer on her, shocking the others. Futaba suddenly becomes silent and starts to laugh because of how tasty the alcohol is. Apparently, she easily gets drunk, so she picks up the man and begins to throw him around. Because of the ruckus, Taio escapes with Mutsumi to a private place. Taio soon decides to go to his room to have a bath, but Mutsumi drags him back and suggests they take a bath together in her own bath. As if on cue, Kyoichiro arrives at the resort after he quickly concluded his mission. When Kyoichiro and Emma enter, they find Futaba throwing the man around. Meanwhile, Taio almost drowns in the water as Mutsumi becomes naked and enters the water. She notices he's mute and tells him it's no big deal since they're married. She also points out that she used to bathe with her brother when they were little, but Taio points out it's not the same thing. After Taio relaxes, Mutsumi tells him she wants to tell him something and gets out of the water naked, covering her front with her towel. When he looks at her, he notices a scar on her chest. He asks how it came to be, so she explains that Yozakura abducted her when she was in 6th grade. Apparently, they nearly removed her heart. Apparently, getting her blood can be used for those compatible with it, but will also eliminate thousands of victims who aren't. The reason Taio was compatible was because his body was almost losing its life and she had no other choice. However, she points out that the entire thing was set up to happen that way by her father. Confused, Taio mentions that he thought her father had passed away, so Mutsumi mentions that she felt the same, but Kyoichiro told her he found him in the woods. Taio wonders why her father, Momo, would do that, so Mutsumi explains that Momo wanted him to be infused with the Yozakura blood. Mutsumi explains that she doesn't know why he did it, and she recalls a time when her father had saved her from the fire. Momo apologized back then and promised to go save her mother but asked her to escape with Kyoichiro. Eventually, Mutsumi confesses to Taio that she's now worried about what the future holds and if she can handle it, so she places her head on Taio's chest and Taio hugs her. He tells her they need to go see her father to know why he didn't come see his family even though he was alive, and that's surprises Mutsumi. Suddenly, Shinszo is thrown into the water with a bulge on his face, and he asks them to run. Shortly after, Kyoichiro shows up and reminds them that he warned them not to bathe together. Kyoichiro immediately directs his wires at Taio in an attempt to fill the tub with his blood. However, Futaba shows up to stop Kyoichiro's attack. Since fighting is a taboo, Futaba gets all the men who hate Kyoichiro, along with the siblings, to come fight him with pillows. Kyoichiro fights them all easily, allowing Taio and Mutsumi to escape. While fighting, Kengo disguises himself as Mutsumi in a towel, and that breaks Kyoichiro's guard, allowing the others to pummel him. Sometime later, Rin does some research into the path of a train. Meanwhile, Oga and Sui break into a warehouse that belongs to Tanpopo and take out the guards. Once inside, they find out it's empty. Somewhere else, another man reports their intrusion to Kawashita. At the facility, Sui reports to his boss that the enemy has already removed the massive amount of Hazakura here. Suddenly, Oga notices a bomb nearby and it goes off with him in the warehouse. Meanwhile, Kawashita also leaves the facility he's in because he knows they'll come there after. When he steps out, he notices the smoke from the facility he blew up. At the facility, Oga and Sui manage to escape by a small margin. Shortly after, Kawashita goes to meet a lady named Hakuja, and they both set out to go meet someone. At the Yozakura house, Mutsumi recalls her last encounter with her father in the fire, but Goliath comes to comfort her. Suddenly, Ayaka meets with Mutsumi and tells her that they've met with a dead end with the present issue, despite the Hinagiku helping and pulling all-nighters. However, they seem to have found out that Tanpopo is transporting a certain substance regularly, and they think it's a great volume of Hazakura. Even though they've not figured out the exact location, they decided to split up to investigate the possible routes. Other than that, Mutsumi worries about Taio, who hasn't returned from his mission. Meanwhile, Momo and Kawashita enjoy a train ride. Kawashita cheers to a successful mission, but Momo doesn't respond to him. While eating, Kawashita suddenly mentions that he believes Taio has come on board. On another part of the train, Taio goes around the train dressed like a porter. He serves people excellently and even cleans perfectly, which impresses his bosses. The people on the train also call him for several random things and he has to help out. On one occasion, Taio has to pick up a child who found his way to the roof. After some time, Taio realizes he's not picked up anything suspicious on the train, and he wonders if this train actually belongs to Tanpopo. After their trip, he's been looking for information on Momo, but has been unable to find anything. The only reason he's on this train is because it's on the route that Tanpopo uses to smuggle things. Suddenly, Taio mistakenly drops his gun from the top of the train, and he realizes he's cooked because Shinszo had helped him to modify it. When he gets back into the train, he finds Hakuja almost falling out of the window. When he drags her back in, she hands him his gun. Confused, he asks her how she got it, so she says she saw him drop the toy gun from the window, so she rushed to pick it up. After Taio thanks her, he moves forward to answer another woman. When he enters the woman's room, she laments that she can't open her window. Taio suddenly recalls that there's always stains of soot on the train, people are unable to see well, and the food is tasteless. It's almost as if the smoke is filling up the train, so Taio panics because the train has been modified and there shouldn't be any smoke. He uses a device that can detect toxins and notices that the toxins flowing around are almost 100%. Taio immediately breaks the windows using his electric gun, causing the smoke to seep out of the train. Everyone runs out except two men who continue sitting. When Taio walks up to them, he learns that it's Momo and Kawashita, who had filled up the train with hallucinatory gas. Taio recognizes Momo and recalls he was the same person who injured him back at the hotel. Eventually, Taio calls Momo father and tells him it's nice to meet him. He points a gun at him but introduces himself as Mutsumi's husband and explains he's come to meet him properly. At the house, Futaba returns home and learns from Shion that she found Kawashita on the train. Taio is on using GPS. Apparently, they've been unable to contact Taio, so Futaba heads out to go pick up Taio. On the train, Hakuja approaches Taio and distracts him. Suddenly, Momo grabs Taio and tells him he doesn't need to grip his gun too strongly, just like Shinszo had taught him. As Taio tries to react, Hakuja binds him with her hair and takes the gun out of his hand. Eventually, Kawashita explains that Hakuja is 100% compatible with Hazakura. Apparently, Kawashita had staged this to get Taio to face Hakuja so he could compare the powers of Hazakura and Yozakura and gather data. He intentionally fed them wrong data so as to cause them to split up. Kawashita leaves, but Momo tells Taio that the Yozakura blood in him will show him the way and wishes him Godspeed. When they step out, Momo hints that he knows he has other plans concerning their group. Shortly after, Hakuja separates their coach from the rest of the train and coils her hair around Taio. Taio awakens his powers and cuts through the hair. When Hakuja attacks him with her hair, our boy dodges all of her attacks with great speed until he gets close. Regardless, she manages to grab him and throw him into the train. Hakuja explains that her hair uses a synthesized component of the Yozakura blood called parasummonine to be able to move at 100% efficiency. Even if he's the real deal, she points out that he has no chance against her since he's inexperienced. She explains that she received this power 10 years ago when she was sick and could barely walk, but Hazakura gave her another chance at life. However, the human body can only tolerate 100% Hazakura for 10 years, so she knows a painful death awaits her soon. Shocked, Taio asks her why she would do that, so she explains that she has a strong will to live. Apparently, Tanpopo is about allowing people to live again. The Yozakura on the train will eventually find its way to those who need it, and the data gotten from them will be used to perfect it. Hakuja tells him that him not being able to stop this train and her will caused Tanpopo to swallow him up as well as his wife. Next up, Taio dodges all her attacks and throws her into the roof, but she survives it. After that, he shoots at her again, but she blocks it with her hair and knocks him backwards. Apparently, her hair blocks electricity, so Taio decides to modify his gun into an electric katana called Rain. Taio knows that Tanpopo will get Mutsumi if they keep getting stronger, so he plans to stop it here. As soon as he activates his electric katana, Hakuja launches her hair at him, but Taio uses the ancient Yozakura sword technique to cut it. As he moves closer, he plans to knock her out with the stun gun, but she pushes him back. She assures him that it doesn't matter how much he cuts because her hair will keep growing. Shortly after, she turns her hairs into pythons and starts to hit Taio at a speed that he can barely see. Suddenly, Taio notices a pattern in her hair and realizes she's using hair to communicate a message to him so Kawashita doesn't catch on. She's doing this so he can know the truth in the time that she has left. Hakuja explains that it's her fault that his family died. Apparently, more than 10 years ago, her greatest desire was to live. In a flashback, she was on her deathbed, but Taio's parents came to greet her on her birthday and they gave her sun earrings as a gift. Hakuja wonders why they do this, so they tell her to hang in there because her long hospital stay will soon come to an end when she's discharged. Shortly after, Kawashita comes in, and Taio's dad emotionally thanks him for suggesting the clinical trial that is now helping Hakuja's health. Shortly after, Hakuja's hair grows back and the Asanos help her out in a wheelchair. Mr. Asano cries once more, and Ms. Asano tells Hakuja they have the option of enjoying all the things she wanted to do. Hakuja explains she was so excited until she found out it was a lie. Sometime later, Hakuja returns to the hospital to get checked by Kawashita. She thanks Kawashita for his help because she never thought she'd be able to live. Before she leaves, Kawashita shows her the bodies of 10,000 subjects he's infused with Yozakura who have died after a year or two. For some reason, her illness made her 100% compatible with Yozakura. He tells her they're not an evil organization, but helping them to continue their research will help them help other people like her. When Hakuja asks what will happen to the Asanos, Kawashita mentions that he ensured they left this world with the rest of their family and his upstanding people so they don't affect them. In the present, Taio's stomach turns inside out. In the flashback, Hakuja weeps when she hears about what happened to the Asanos. Kawashita explains that they sacrificed their lives for a greater purpose and welcomes her to Tanpopo, after which he names her Hakuja. Hakuja also explains that the earrings she's wearing have been fitted with a tracker to know where she is, so she tells him to use them to track those who want to take down those who want his family. Hakuja feels unworthy of wearing the earrings, which she had to take lives to keep. Suddenly, she uses her hair to push him out of the train's roof. In another flashback, Taio recalls a time when his parents went to save another man's daughter when she drowned while they were having some family time. After that, he recalls the night his family died and how he couldn't protect them. Our guy beats himself up for being unable to protect those he loves because of his weakness. After kicking him out, Hakuja tells Taio she'll be leaving soon. Before she can finish her words, Taio phases to her side and tries to cut her, but she blocks it. Meanwhile, Kawashita watches the sudden spike in Taio's abilities and is impressed, but Momo mentions that Taio is losing control of his Summonine activation because of his strong emotions and will get himself killed by the Summonine in a few minutes. In the train, Taio tries to cut Hakuja again, but she eventually constricts him with her hair. Suddenly, Taio flashes back to the scene of his family's death and he apologizes to everyone. As he's about to give up, he flashes back to a time he woke up injured on a bed with Mutsumi by his side. That memory gives him strength and he manages to break free of the bind. Suddenly, Taio cuts his own leg and blood starts to pour out. Kawashita finds that odd, but Momo mentions that it's a primitive way of releasing excess Summonine since he can regenerate. On the train, Taio mentions that he was unable to protect his family, but he sure won't let his new family get destroyed. Using his katana, Taio sends the electricity through his body to increase the conductivity of his Summonine, but he recalls from Shinszo's training that he only has a short time to act after this. As he rushes towards her at lightning speed, Hakuja targets him with an 8-head serpent made with her hair. However, Taio uses the ancient Yozakura sword technique to cut through it before he lands his final blow. Suddenly, Hakuja collapses and she realizes that she's lost everything even after she sacrificed lovely people to get it. As she collapses, Taio comes to her side. Hakuja wonders why he still doesn't turn on her even till the end, but Taio just gives her her earrings that fell off. This confuses Hakuja, but Taio explains that his mom and dad used to talk to him about her and about how strong she fought even when she was sick. Taio tells her he doesn't blame her for his parents' death, but he blames Tanpopo for taking advantage of her sickness. Finally, he thanks her for helping him ensure the safety of his new family. After Hakuja passes away, Taio realizes realizes he has to stop the train. However, a huge bear hand suddenly appears and tears Taio up. When Taio looks up, he finds out it's a little girl named Ai, and he finds another man who reminds Ai that she should have gone for Taio's head to take him out. Ai apologizes for her mistake, but Mizuki comforts her and tells her to keep working hard. With Taio on the ground, Mizuki proceeds to retrieve Hakuja's body based on Kawashita's orders. Mizuki soon places his hot hands on Taio to put him out of his misery, causing him to scream in pain. However, Futaba and Rin show up in front of the moving train, and Futaba thanks Rin for coming with her. Mizuki recognizes the ladies and notices Ai running towards the ladies. Mizuki realizes the women are the top 2 female spies and tries to call Ai back, but she doesn't listen. Ai eventually lands an attack on Rin, but Rin thanks her for the handshake and knocks her back to her master. After Mizuki catches Ai, he tells her there's no need to impress him because their opponents are specialists in hand-to-hand combat, so they can't go head-to-head against them. However, he believes they can't go against his power called Dead Man's Tongue, so he releases a poisonous gas towards them that kills everything in its path. However, the ladies aren't fazed, and Futaba splits the poison apart with her hands. After that, she stops the train with one hand, much cleaner than Superman could have done. After that, Futaba and Rin pick up Taio on one of the coaches, while Mizuki escapes with Hakuja's body. The ladies leave the scene on one of the coaches that got ejected after Futaba hit the whole thing. The thing keeps traveling in the air as if it has an engine, and it's clear that Superman has nothing on Futaba's upper arm strength. Sometime later, Kawashita laments after losing a card game he's playing with the others 10 times in a row. He laments that he's a surgeon and mind games aren't his forte, but he's placed on bathing duty for A. While they're having fun, some other chicks that are part of Tanpopo arrive with supplies. One of them, named Akai, is angry that Kawashita is lazing around and looks annoying. However, Kawashita tries to indulge Akai in a game, but she tells him to piss off. Meanwhile, AE goes to meet another guy named Anoma and asks him to make it snow, which he likes. Later, Kawashita speaks with another one of them named Kurosawa, who seems to communicate in sign language. Later on, Kawashita promises to cook his special organic vegetable hot pot for them so they can throw a party where they pray for their seed sowing program. However, Momo seems to be concerned about something else. Meanwhile, the Yozakuras receive a message from Rin about the discovery of Tanpopo's hideout. Apparently, it's in a place called Skeleton Island and is a deserted fishing village. They analyzed the GPS data from the earring that Taio got from Hakuja, and it led there. They could also detect that there are massive amounts of Hazakura on the island, and it seems these people have a great plan. Because they can't waste time, Rin explains that they're going to be attacking the hideout in a week. In addition, Futaba suggests that Rin find a way to get the Spy Association to give them some support for what they'll face on the island. Soon after, Kyoichiro tells them all to increase training in preparation for next week because everyone will be heading out. Later on, Taio recalls his fight with Hakuja and he decides that he needs to be better because he's not good enough. When he opens a drawer to put his gun in, he's shocked to see Ban inside and he shouts in surprise. As if that's not enough, Keiko shows up, so Taio asks them why they're here. Ban explains that he heard that things are going to get tough, so he busted out of prison to help train him. Later, Ban takes Taio to a palace where they used to do a lot of their training. Apparently, Futaba used to twirl him around a lot here when she was just 3. Apart from that, Ban and Momo used to train here a lot too, and Ban admits that Momo was the fastest learner he's ever seen. However, Ban now plans to make Taio equally strong so he can speak to Momo as an equal. Suddenly, the ground around them is shot full of holes. Ban explains that using Summonine to simply enhance strength is stuff for novices because someone can help him control the weight, strength, and pain of his bullets. He reminds Taio of how it feels for a bullet to enter his body so gently that he doesn't feel it, and Taio remembers what Momo did to them. Ban explains that Momo's bullets are much heavier than his, but the only way to beat Momo is to get used to those bullets. Suddenly, Ban fires a gun at Taio and he dials down its strength so it's not lethal. He keeps shooting up Taio in the name of helping him get used to the bullets, but he eventually tells Taio to use his sword. When Taio tries to deflect one bullet with his sword, it sinks into his face and he realizes this isn't the Matrix movie. Ban promises to keep shooting him for a week to help him keep his Summonine under control by learning how to pick the trajectory of bullets. When Taio heals, Ban ejects an armory and tells him that they're doing 1 million shots next. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro goes to meet Seiji and Rin, and he explains how to weave a Yozakura steel spider. Seiji makes some progress, but Rin seems to be making barbed wire. She tries to do it again, but mistakenly cuts the bandage on her hand, revealing the mark of Tanpopo. Kyoichiro suggests she get some synthetic skin from Kengo, but Rin tells him she won't get rid of it until she wipes out Tanpopo, who kidnapped her when she was a little girl. Meanwhile, Sui and Oga also show Nanao their own dandelion marks they got from Tanpopo. Apparently, Tanpopo performs their modifications on orphans and people they kidnap. But to stop that, Rin founded Hinagiku to stop Tanpopo's plans. Even though she managed to save many, some of them died on the way due to the long-term effects of Hazakura. After Nanao analyzes their blood, he notices great similarity with their blood, but he plans to analyze it more till he can find a way to remove the terrible effects Hazakura has on the body. Apparently, Sui and Oga had volunteered to help Nanao with his research. Meanwhile, Kengo goes to have a massage and bath. While they're pampering him, he asks a guy named Hatoda, who's in charge of weapons and counterfeit money, to give him some wine. Hatoda also tells him that he'll provide the thing he requested. While that's going on, Shinszo cries about how his parents were gone before they could create a special weapon for him. Because of the memories and pain, he couldn't bring himself to look at the blueprints, but he plans to create the weapon to save Mutsumi this time. Ayaka also cries with him, and she later brings some candy to help him relax. They soon begin taking the candies while crying about how they need to save Mutsumi. Later, Futaba heads to the association and makes the Yozakura Senkati ceremony, which he starts mixing. Her hand moves so fast that it creates a whirlwind that throws people around. When the tea is ready, Futaba gives Hoshifuru the tea. She learns from him that his gold-ranked customers are out on missions, and when he realizes she may need assistance, he offers to help because of his beloved Taio. Meanwhile, Taio ends up with a swollen face and many bruises. When Mutsumi runs to his side, he mentions that he saw the faces of his dead family. Eventually, Ban worries that he's doing this the wrong way because Taio isn't showing any improvements and won't make it at this rate. However, when he recalls that Taio has only half awakened, he decides to help him and reveals his fully awakened eyes. Ban flexes his cool eyes and explains that full awakening is called blooming. Apparently, Summonine enhances the body, and it's just a power that the Yozakura head can share once in their lifetime. Just like Taio, Ban received his own from Keiko. Even though the skills are always different, awakening enhances one's power even more. His own power allows his bones and cells to be fluid, so he can enter into impenetrable places. Suddenly, Ban shoots into the ground until water comes out. Apparently, he infused the tip of the bullet with his unique penetration powers and was able to blast 1,000 meters beneath the mansion till he hit water, and decides that he's going to switch to a training method that will help Taio fully awaken. Even though it's dangerous, he wants to do this because they're low on time. From that time, the training program begins, and Taio can't believe his eyes when it seems Ban is teaching him how to dance. They continue dancing, and both ladies clap for how good Taio is getting, but our boy doesn't know what the heck is going on. Ban explains that this is called resonance dance because the vaporized summonine coming out of his body can cause him to awaken. If their temperature and frequency are able to resonate, it can trigger his blooming. Taio believes it's a ridiculous theory, but Taio soon notices that his second eye is starting to bloom. To test out his improvements, Ban fires a gun at him, knocking him backward. Mutsumi rushes to her husband's side, but it turns out Taio's heightened senses helped him block the bullet with the electric katana. Ban tries to call it a day, but Taio refuses to stop because he wants to take the risk. That impresses Ban, who decides to ramp up the risk a bit by shooting at Mutsumi. When Ban shoots at her, Taio moves with lightning speed and stops the bullet, and it turns out his second eye has awakened. Taio can't even understand how he moved there, but he realizes his body moved on its own. Immediately, Ban realizes Taio has awakened a power called hardening, which allows him to harden his cells to stop the bullet. Apparently, all that's left for Taio now is to learn how to control it. While he's talking, Taio puts a sword to Ban's neck. Taio acknowledges that he did it to help him bloom, but he warns him to never point a gun at Mutsumi again, and Ban promises. Suddenly, when Ban tells Taio it was staged, his brain starts to boot in kilobytes until he sees Mutsumi remove a transparent shield off her. Later on, he finds out that Mutsumi was protected with something called white spider nest, and Keiko whoops Ban and Mutsumi. While she punishes them, she asks them why they'd risk Mutsumi's life like that, and why they'd mess with Taio like that. Meanwhile, all the color seems to have drained out of Taio's form because of what has happened to him, so much so that he tells Mutsumi to give him some time to think about it. As punishment, Keiko promises not to give Ban any hugs for a week, which he considers equal to a death sentence. From Mutsumi, she takes her down a secret door, which Mutsumi didn't know about. Apparently, it's an old passageway that can only be opened with the head's ring. Apparently, it highlights the life of all the previous heads until they get to a room where the roots of the Yozakura are kept. There, they find a book that Keiko says contains the secrets of the family's origins. Apparently, they lost the method of unlocking the book during the war, and Keiko says she hasn't seen the insides. Apparently, trying to force the book open will automatically destroy the mansion to keep the secrets of the book. The family has been protecting this book for centuries to ensure their secrets don't get into the hands of the wrong people. Suddenly, Keiko asks Mutsumi if she's prepared to destroy everything if she ever finds herself alone, trying to protect the secrets of the Yozakura. Eventually, Mutsumi confesses that she is willing to do that. Moments later, Ban breaks into the room after chasing the women, but Taio catches him. Mutsumi is shocked to see Taio, but he hugs her and apologizes to her for pushing her far away. Later on, the family holds a Yozakura banquet under a cherry blossom tree, which they always do before any war, and Rin excitedly eats lots of sugars. Everyone else also has their fill, but Sui tries to convince the chief and Oga to restrain themselves because they're invited guests. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro takes pictures of his own food and even stops Seiji from having any of it. Shortly after, Taio notices his powers awaken when he gets close to the three, which he finds odd. Suddenly, Keiko explains to him that this is a family tree named Tenu, which can resonate with Yozakura blood, and was planted by the first head of family to heal the body and soul. Apparently, this is why they gather here before any major event they have. Moments later, Keiko offers Taio a certain food called dashimaki, but before he can eat it, Ban crawls there at lightning speed because he misses Keiko's dashimaki. Taio is forced to back off, but he runs into Hoshifuru, who had left his work to come see Taio. Suddenly, Hoshifuru puts his hand around Taio's waist and mentions that he's gorgeous under the brightness of the tree. Hoshifuru even made his favorite food and brought it along. Suddenly, a spike targets Hoshifuru, forcing him to run back. It turns out to be Ayaka, who warns Taio that he can't eat the food because he doesn't know what's inside. Hoshifuru and Ayaka recognize each other and know about how they're both famous for weird things. Ayaka insists insists that Taio prefers her omelet, but Hoshifuru insists that her food can't beat his own. When they both begin to butt heads, Sui shows up and tells them to cut it off. Taio thinks he wants to resolve the issue until he votes for the one thick tamagoyaki he found is the best. That annoys Ban, who now claims that Keiko's dashimaki tops the list. Immediately, Kyoichiro retorts that Mutsumi's tamagoyaki is the best. Eventually, Taio is put in the middle and they try to force him to taste everything to judge. Suddenly, Taio collects all their food and eats it at once. After doing that, he thanks them all for the food and claims they were all delicious. Meanwhile, the members of Tanpopo gather to celebrate the seed sowing project they'll be launching the next day. Kawashita suggests they party like crazy, and Ai excitedly parades a cake. However, Akai wonders if they're doing too much since they've been feasting for days. One person named Chacha agrees with her and asks Kawashita what they'll do if they're suddenly attacked, so Kawashita responds that he's certain that their enemies won't even reach this island. When Anoma notices his meat is still raw, he asks Akai to help out, so she grills it with her fire. When Kawashita asks her to do the same thing, she burns his face along with the meat. While that's happening, the Yozakura family sits in front of a stage and waits for something, which they do as tradition. Suddenly, Mutsumi introduces the performers and Shion appears out of the smoke. She sings a sick rock song about a magical hop while wearing bunny ears. As if that's not enough, Keiko and Mutsumi handle the guitars, and it's clear these ladies have got some swag. After that, Shion continues her amazing performance, and Ayaka even mans the guitar. That's not weird enough because Ban and Kyoichiro soon break out a funny dance while holding glow sticks. Nanao and Goliath soon show up on stage wearing bunny ears too, and they tear up the stage with cool dance moves. After Shion ends the performance, Shion almost dies of shame because some of this seemed to have been Nanao's ideas. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro cries tears of joy because Mutsumi was born into this world, while Ban cries because he has no regrets. When Shinszo praises Shion's voice, she pummels his face with her microphone and tells him he's next. Next up, Shinszo shows up on stage with a chain packed with grenades and a hard metal rock vibe. Taio can't believe his eyes, but Shinszo tells them his song is called Scarlet Cherry Blossom. Immediately, Shinszo starts growling out the words Scarlet and Cherry Blossom, along with many other heinous words, forcing some of them to cover their ears. There are also mixed reactions because Shion and Oga seem to love the performance. After that, Kengo and Goliath do some moonwalking. When they're done, Ban does something like miming, and then Sway splits someone in half after that. Futaba throws some darts at Ayaka, who is tied to a board. After that, Seiji also does a sick music performance. Later on, Ayaka and Hoshifuru share their creepy stash of Taio's pictures. Finally, Mutsumi gets on stage and goes through the details of their operation by going through a guideline book she prepared for them. So Taio wonders if this is a field trip. Their first mission is to retrieve all the Hazakura with Tanpopo and to arrest Kawashita, and the second is to liberate any subject being held on the island against their own will. The third mission is to unveil the truth about Momo, because they've not been able to track what Momo has been doing for many years. Suddenly, Kyoichiro drags Taio away with his wires and strings him to some trees by a gravesite. When Taio sees the grave, Kyoichiro explains that it belongs to their mother, the ninth head. However, Kyoichiro explains that their mother's body is not in the grave, but he suspects that Tanpopo has her body. Without her body, he believes Tanpopo could never have come this far. Kyoichiro tells Taio that they'd both perform a secret mission where they'll extract his mother's body and lay her to rest without the rest of the siblings finding out. Eventually, Taio asks him why he would give such an important mission to him, so Kyoichiro tells him not to flatter himself. However, he explains that he doesn't want to cause pain to his siblings by making them see this, so he plans to shoulder it alone. He showed it to Taio because he's an outsider, so he warns him not to tell Mutsumi. While Kyoichiro is talking, Futaba suddenly comes to knock him down, and it's clear that Ban succeeded in making Futaba drink. With Taio left alone, Mutsumi comes to help Taio up, and she tells him she'll always be rooting for him regardless of what happens. By 5:30 the next morning, the family heads out to the island. Meanwhile, Kawashita wakes up after sleeping late because of karaoke. Suddenly, he's told by Chacha that intruders have been detected. While that's happening, the siblings fly over the islands in the family car, but Shinszo refuses to jump down because he's afraid of heights. Goliath goes down first with the siblings on his back, and Kawashita wonders how their cover got blown. When he asks, Momo explains that it was Hakuja who gave Taio information about this hideout during the train ride. He explains she sent him an encoded message too fast to read without Summon 9 enhancement, so Kawashita asks Momo why he didn't mention that before. Momo responds that he didn't say because Kawashita didn't ask him, so Kawashita concedes. I wonders if Hakuja doesn't like them anymore, but Mizuki assures her she must have had her reasons. When the siblings get close to the ground, Shion hacks into their system and learns the blueprint of the place. She also picks out that the hideout is in a former army base that's 1,000 meters in the ground, but when she tries to hack into the system deeper, she's pushed out and told to stay away by Chacha. Meanwhile, Akai heads out to face the men and promises to eliminate them all, which makes Kawashita's heart melt. He's glad she went up there to face them because she's the most devastating monster they have in this place, which is called Nijibana. It turns out that Akai is a Tanpopo executive, and she has a Hazakura efficiency of 512%. When Goliath gets closer, Akai releases a claw of fire at them to welcome them, but Futaba leaps towards the claw and drains it using the wind around. Futaba insists she's going to let herself in and breaks the door beneath them with one punch. Kawashita wonders how Futaba was able to counter that, but it's soon confirmed hint that they've been breached. The rest of the siblings rush in and they move towards their respective missions. Once in, the siblings meet other soldiers but they take them down easily. Immediately, Shion tells Kengo and Nanao to rescue the subjects while Kyoichiro, Shinszo, and Taio move towards the deepest part of the base to capture Kawashita. On the surface, Futaba signals the helicopters from the Spy Association to surround the island. Moments later, Akai breaks through the rubble poured over her and almost burns Goliath, but Futaba calls him back. Futaba immediately sends Goliath to take care of the soldiers on the other route while she faces Akai on her own. Meanwhile, Kawashita tells Akai to ensure she takes Futaba alive so they can use her for research. But Akai tells him to shut up because she knows. Immediately, Akai blasts Futaba with her fire, but Futaba waves it away with her hands. Mizuki also tells Akai not to let her guard down because Futaba is the eldest Yozakura daughter. Just to be sure, Kawashita tells Chacha to call for outside reinforcements, but Chacha explains that's not possible for now. It turns out that Keiko is a badass sniper, and she uses her gun to shoot down their communication antennas. Eventually, Chacha sends out Kurosawa as backup, so Onoma decides to join him. When A holds on to Onoma, he mentions that his grandma used to tell him that discretion is the better part of valor. He directly tells him that he'll ditch them all and ensure he survives if it comes down to it. While that's happening, the other guys keep taking down soldiers pumped with Hazakura, but more keep coming. Suddenly, Kurosawa, who is basically liquid metal, shows up to fight them, and Kurosawa has a 500% Hazakura efficiency. Shinszo shoots Kurosawa full of holes, but he starts to regenerate. Before he can fully regenerate, Shinszo tells the others to leave Kurosawa to him, so they proceed with their mission. Since he can't pierce him with his bullets, Shinszo decides to switch to his big guns. Outside, Futaba asks Akai to surrender instead of risking her life because they're only after Kawashita. However, Akai clarifies she has nothing to lose, then activates her Hazakura blooming, which turns her flames into condensed rays of heat. The rays target Futaba at great speed, but she believes she can deflect them. As the rays are about to hit her, Futaba tries to deflect them, but the rays wrap around her hand. She quickly throws away the piece of clothing that was set ablaze, and Akai explains to her that her flames cannot be deflected or put out. Next up, Akai releases the flames from the ground and covers Futaba with them. However, Futaba creates a shield of air to protect herself from the rays. When Akai sees that, she releases a greater amount at Futaba until her barrier is overwhelmed. The power of the hit is so strong that everyone on the island feels it. In the underground base, Chacha informs the others that Akai has activated her blooming. Kawashita recalls that he found Akai by hacking into international medical records. Apparently, she was just an ordinary high schooler at first glance, but she's come so far. In a flashback to many years ago, Kawashita came to her house because she's compatible with Hazakura, only to find it ablaze. With Kurosawa's help, he manages to rescue Akai, but he uses the organs of her siblings to rebuild her. After Akai awakens, she goes back to burn the man who set her house on fire, but the pain of losing her family was still great. In the present, Futaba tears through the fire once more. Because of this, Akai tells her she won't be able to block the heat even if she can deflect it, so she's going to crank it up until one of them passes away. However, Futaba clarifies that she doesn't intend to let any of them pass away, so she activates her own blooming. Suddenly, Akai recalls Kawashita explaining that the Yozakura blooming activates someone to their peak, and the Hazakura blooming is no match for it. He tells her to ensure she never engages someone in Yozakura blooming if such a time ever comes. In the present, Akai refuses to believe Futaba is really that strong, so she decides she'll test her strength. After firing a heat ray at Futaba, Futaba controls the wind around the fire until it goes out. It surprises Akai, so Futaba explains that the power of her blooming, called magnanimity, increases her vision to the maximum limit as well as the accuracy of her hands. That way, she can produce a force that can neutralize any attacks, and not even Akai's flames can penetrate her. Regardless, Akai releases a great blast of rays towards Futaba, but she continues to nullify the attack. At that point, Kawashita tells Akai to retreat because she'll burn her body to death if she continues to crank up the usage. Kawashita tries to convince her to keep her body, especially for the hope of the new worlds, but Akai tells him she doesn't care. Recalling how she's lost her family and everything, she decides to crank things up even if she becomes eliminated. When Kawashita notices Akai is going beyond her body's temperature limit, he orders Chacha to put up the fireproof wall. Eventually, Akai releases a huge explosion that covers the entire area once more. This time, when the smoke clears out, she finds Futaba holding her hands. Futaba tells her she doesn't see her as someone to be discarded, so she knocks Akai out with a gust of wind and blasts away the fire burning around her. After Akai collapses, Futaba realizes there's no point in telling someone who's lost hope not to give in to despair, but she tells Akai she recently met a kid who has been able to overcome it. After Akai loses consciousness, Chacha tells them they have a 26% odd of being attacked, but he tells them the men in the base will run into Onoma soon. Regardless, Kawashita claims that them attacking this hideout won't affect the seed sowing project because he has the goddess of victory on his side, Rei Yozakura, Mutsumi's mother. Meanwhile, Shion gets the passcode to where the research subjects are kept, so she leads Nanao and Kengo to go set them free. Nanao and Kengo run into some trouble, but Nanao releases some tear gas that knocks out the soldiers. When they move forward, the air around them suddenly crystallizes. It turns out to be Onoma, and Kengo comments that his power must help him in the summer. Eventually, Kengo releases several balloon versions of himself. He had gotten Hatoda from the Popopo toy store to replicate him using a microchip and steel spider wire. Kengo's duplicates surround Anoma, and he starts to tear through them using his ice hands. Eventually, Anoma builds a wall of ice and informs Kawashita about those trying to access their test subjects. To avoid getting their data stolen, Kawashita considers sending Kurosawa to dispose of the test subjects. To do that, he sends Anoma to go secure their power source, so Anoma leaves the men to go do that. Meanwhile, Ai laments to Kawashita that some of the test subjects he wants to dispose of are her friends, but Kawashita promises to bring her some new ones. When Ai insists, Mizuki grabs Ai's head with an awry look, and that makes her quickly apologize for being unreasonable. Immediately, Kawashita reroutes Kurosawa to the research wing so he can take care of the test subjects. On the upper floor, Kurosawa takes out the men fighting by his side and runs past Shinszo to go deal with his mission. As he moves forward, he continues to take out any of the soldiers in his way. When the men realize his killing intent, one of them slows him down by firing a cannon into his face, but Kurosawa soon bores a hole in his stomach. Meanwhile, Shinszo follows after Kurosawa and attacks him from behind. Shinszo uses a weapon made from a special alloy called Black Shadow Stone. When he goes into attack again, he breaks Kurosawa's form much more, but the guy simply regenerates once more. After regenerating, a wall suddenly appears between Kurosawa and Shinszo, so Shinszo realizes Shin must have triggered it. However, when Kurosawa bores through the hole, Shion tells Shinszo to go help out Taio and the rest while she deals with this guy because Shinszo is not a good match for him. Regardless, Shinszo insists on facing the monster because he knows he can activate his blooming if he has to. Shion becomes worried and reminds him that he hasn't done that in years, but Shinszo insists that he needs to step up too, especially since Futaba says she'll use hers. Shinszo uses the formless alloy with him to create a huge hammer-like weapon and prepares to face Kurosawa. When Kurosawa rushes at him, Shinszo smashes off his limbs and knocks him down. Kurosawa still plans to attack, so Shinszo breaks him to pieces again. However, this is not enough, as Kurosawa simply regenerates and even creates a cage for the both of them. Using the walls of the shield, Kurosawa rains down his attack, so Shinszo quickly protects himself with an alloy shield. When Kurosawa keeps raining attacks, Shinszo flashes back to a point where he became afraid of his blooming when he was 14. Apparently, he got awakened by mistake and he destroyed many things because he couldn't control it, and that made him afraid. In the flashback, Rei tells Shinszo that she loves him and reminds him that he has a good heart. In the present, Shinszo transforms his weapon into a sword and uses it to break the cage around him. However, he soon decides to awaken his blooming and hopes that Kurosawa won't get killed. Kengo activates his blooming and appears at Kurosawa's side in a second. He turns his weapon into a drill and drills into a certain part of Kurosawa's makeup before he is knocked into a nearby ball by Kurosawa. As Kurosawa proceeds to continue, he notices he can't regenerate, so Shinszo lets him know that he found a way to crush the part of his cells that are responsible for his regeneration. Shinszo explains that his blooming, which is destruction, allows him to destroy anything. Kurosawa comes in to attack him, but Shinszo parries his attack using his alloy weapon. They both begin to attack each other maniacally, and both of them sustain injuries. When Kurosawa cuts Shinszo, Shinszo thanks him for letting out the blood rushing to his head, which was a bait. Shinszo immediately dashes towards Kurosawa and cuts his head off. He also thanks him for helping him let out his blood, so his blooming doesn't go into a rampage. When Shinszo reports his success to the others, Kurosawa's head just stares at him in confusion, wondering what the heck he got himself into today. Suddenly, Shinszo is ambushed by some soldiers, but they're suddenly stopped in their tracks. After Kawashita clicks a button, every soldier in the building blows up on their own. Apparently, Kawashita had embedded self-destruction chips in all of his soldiers, and he used them to avoid a data leak. He also plans to destroy the test subjects, but he considers all of this worth it as long as the seed sowing project goes well. The siblings wonder why Kawashita will destroy his own men, but Shion finally hacks into their system and recognizes their plan. She explains that Kawashita doesn't care about his soldiers or test subjects or even himself as long as his scheme can work. From the plan she found, there's a place in the deepest part of this hideout that has more than 20,000 tons of Hazakura, which is more than enough for everyone on Earth. They've covered the storage with explosives so that the storage explodes when the Hazakura reaches its max, releasing it into the ocean. The Hazakura will spread across all water bodies, and even though most will die due to incompatibility, only a few will remain who can control it. Shinszo calculates that they have about 30 minutes before the explosion occurs, so she asks everyone to focus all their attention on it. She tries to hack into the detonation system by using the electric waves in her mind, but her mind is flooded by error messages from Chacha. She's surprised Chacha can read her brain signals, but she doesn't know he's a cyborg with almost 400% Hazakura efficiency. Because Chacha recognizes that Shion is using their power source to hack them, he asks Anima to freeze their power source and shut them down. By the way, Anima has 366 Hazakura efficiency. After shutting down the power source, Chacha attempts to rip Shion's brains to shreds, so he floods her mind with signals. Before he overtakes her mind, the power sources suddenly come back up, and it turns out Kengo turned them on. When Anoma arrives, he stabs Kengo in the brain, but it turns out to be one of his balloon decoys. Immediately, Kengo gathers his decoys and they attempt to activate the other power sources as Anima chases them around. However, Shion warns Kengo to stay put because because he's not the combat type and he'll soon run out of dolls. Regardless, Kengo refuses to turn back and tells Shion she likes to back down and shut in, but he advises her to be more daring. Eventually, Shinszo calls him stupid, but decides to guide him to where he can find the power sources. Meanwhile, Anoma takes down several decoys, but he realizes they may succeed in turning back on the power sources. When he begins to panic, Chacha tells him not to because the detonation will happen in 21 minutes, so they only need to hold them back for that time. While that's happening, Taio struggles to deal with a few more soldiers that weren't taken out before. Kyoichiro takes them down with a single blow and finishes them off, showing Taio the proper way to deal with them. As they both advance into the base, one of the crippled soldiers laments when he realizes they're being used as practice to train a rookie. Such a downer. In another part of the base, Kengo keeps following Shion's lead to get to the next power source. After turning on the 5th power source, some of his decoys are frozen by Anoma, leaving just a few. Although Shion had turned the lights off, Anoma has activated his blooming, which allows him to send his ice very far even though he's in one place. He's able to target Kengo's clones easily because Chacha also has sensors in place to detect them. When Shion begins to panic because Kengo is losing, Chacha calls them fools and says they're losing because they underestimated his great mind. In a flashback, Chacha lies sick on a bed, looking like a meme. Shortly after, Kawashita visited him and offered to help him. In the present, Chacha explains that the others possess crude powers but he has pure talent. He explains that he has no problem seeing all of them, so he suggests they give it up. So much for having pure talent, which you get locked up in the basement looking like a fish. Eventually, Shion tells Chacha that they're alike because they both like to shut themselves in from the world because of their genius. However, she corrects that looking down on those around him just to validate himself makes him just as foolish as the people who abandoned him. However, Chacha tells her he's not interested in her pep talk and proceeds to end this. Meanwhile, Anoma corners Kengo's dolls again as he's about to shut down the power source. Chacha tells him they're still within the time frame of 18 minutes and suggests they celebrate. As Anoma is about to shut down the power source, Kengo grabs his hands and a bright light appears. Suddenly, Chacha's screen fills up with images of Anoma. Anoma suddenly begins receiving several transmissions from Chacha and he doesn't know which one is real. Eventually, Shion explains to Chacha that they dressed Kengo's dolls as Anoma during the blackout, during which she hacked into Chacha's channels. With this, they were able to break the line of communication between Kengo and Chacha. While that's happening, Kengo goes to turn all the power sources back on. After he does that, Shion and Kengo activate their bloomings at once. Kengo walks up to the real Anoma and explains that his blooming allows him to turn into the person he's facing and know everything about them by syncing his brain with theirs. Suddenly, Kengo begins to spit out random facts about Anoma, but Anoma believes he looked it up online. When Kengo begins to spit random facts about his grandma and parents, Anoma stops in his tracks. In a flashback, Anoma hangs out with his grandma and teases her. They're both homeless and live in cardboard boxes on the streets. However, Anoma wishes she'd just kick the bucket so he can just have some space in the box. Later that night, it begins to snow terribly. Anoma can't find his grandma and he believes she must have abandoned him. When he wakes up the next morning, he realizes she didn't abandon him but had pushed him into the cardboard to save him from the snow, but she had frozen till she passed away. Shortly after then, Kawashita passed by. In the present, Anoma strangles Kengo because he's touched a nerve. When he starts to freeze Kengo up, Kengo tells him to let go of the guilt about his grandmother. When Kengo continues to replay the memories about his grandmother, Anoma lets go of Kengo. Suddenly, Chacha notices Anoma's Hazakura reducing, and Anoma tells him he can't fight again. Suddenly, Chacha notices a bug in his system and realizes that someone is watching him. Meanwhile, Shion explains that her own blooming is called analyzation, which turns her brain into a supercomputer and allows her to gain access into any system. When Chacha finds himself in Shion's system, he realizes he's cooked. With just a button, Shion overpowers his lab and causes everything to self-destruct. As everything is being destroyed, Chacha can't believe this is happening to someone of his caliber, and he learns that the biggest head doesn't make you the smartest. Meanwhile, Taio and Kyoichiro reach the deepest part of the hideout and they prepare to capture Kawashita. After breaking down the door, Kawashita laments on the other side because the door is custom built. As Taio is about to attack Kawashita, Kyoichiro stops him because Shion has detected that Kawashita has rigged the hideout to blow up if he receives any damage. Eventually, Kawashita tells him he doesn't care about dying as long as the project works, and he tells him he's captured Nanao as assurance. Meanwhile, Nanao releases the test subjects and refuses to follow them, which surprises the men. Left alone, Nanao is attacked by Ai and Mizuki. Apparently, Mizuki has 488 Hazakura efficiency. Suddenly, Mizuki begins to release sleeping gas into the vents and into the passageway, and that knocks out the test subjects that escape. After Nanao regenerates from the damage and Mizuki's poison, Ai goes in for another attack and warns Nanao to give her back her friends. Apparently, she has a 300% Hazakura efficiency. Eventually, Nanao tells them to stop this foolishness because they must be test subjects themselves and they have no reason to fight. He asks them if they're going to lose their lives because of Kawashita and informs them he has research to help them regain their bodies and reintegrate with society. Hearing that makes Ai seem to change her mind, but Mizuki explains they already have a way to remove the Hazakura. He clarifies that they won't die if this base explodes, and they also have no society to return to. Mizuki explains that his family was eliminated 11 years ago and reminds Nanao of a case of contamination that was on the news. 11 years ago, there was a sudden outbreak outbreak of an odd sickness in a town. People started dying like flies, and they learned that it was because a nearby plant contaminated the soil. Even though the corporation was taken to court, they had heavy government backing, so the people had no chance of winning. To worsen it, they made the press and social media tag them as victims just looking for money. Because of that, Mizuki believes society has deserted them. Apparently, he got infected and accepted his fate of death, but that was when he ran into Kawashita, who offered to help him with Yozakura. Mizuki explains that Tanpopo is a place of refuge for those who have lost all else. Annoyed that Nanao is arrogantly trying to save them, Mizuki floods him with his cells and attempts to destroy him from within. In the lowest part of the base, Taio and Kyoichiro hear Nanao's scream, so Kawashita tells them they can fight him to the end here or go save their little brother. After hesitating for a bit, Taio clarifies that they're not alone. Immediately, Sui cuts off Mizuki's limbs and apologizes to Nanao for being late. Meanwhile, Seiji apologizes to Kyoichiro for being late because he had to go through much paperwork to get Hinagiku and the spy association here. Outside, Rin pummels the soldiers who are pumped with Yozakura, but Futaba warns her to be gentle so she doesn't eliminate them. While that's going on, AE becomes angry and breaks the chain Oga used to tie her up. It surprises the spies, but she attacks them ferociously. While they fight, she explains that Kawashita is scary, her friends are dead, and she has to do things she doesn't want to do, but this home is all she has left. As she fights, she warns them not to take away their home. Immediately, Nanao notices that Ai's DNA is mixed with that of a wolf because of Yozakura. He decides to use his blooming and assures Taio he'll end this soon. Nanao activates his blooming and bright spores appear everywhere, and it surprises Mizuki that they're absorbing his poison. Nanao explains that his blooming is called adaptation, which can counteract any poison it comes in contact with. Because he's seen the list of test subjects, Nanao realizes Kawashita maneuvered many of them into applying, even though it seems like actual applications. He reveals that Kawashita robbed them of an environment to adapt to and made them dependent on him instead of letting them adapt. Nanao releases his spores in a move called purification sublimation, and it overpowers Mizuki faster than he can reproduce poison. After Mizuki collapses, Nanao finds out that he has collapsed while fighting. Apparently, she activated her bloom and is dying because she can't withstand the Yozakura hyperactivity. However, Nanao refuses to let her pass away, so he uses his spores to neutralize the Yozakura in her. When he tries, it doesn't work and her body begins to break down. Suddenly, Mizuki tells Nanao that it's not working because her Yozakura is too small, and that's why Nanao's blood is overpowering it. Instead, Mizuki pumps his Yozakura into the girl, allowing her to be able to receive Nanao's help. However, Nanao realizes that Mizuki's body is going to break down if he loses all his Yozakura, so Mizuki tells Nanao that Ai looks like his dead daughter. In a flashback, Kawashita reminds Mizuki he didn't need to eliminate a young woman because she was abusing her daughter Ai. Apparently, Mizuki had seen his daughter in her and he wanted to save her. They eventually take Ia to join the other kids, and she really likes it there. While looking at the kids, Kawashita considers eliminating one of Ia's friends because he no longer has use for him, but he decides to keep Ia for a while. Apparently, Kawashita keeps taking the lives of the children without much thought, and that scared Mizuki. As if that's not enough, Mizuki tried to control her by putting his hands on her head, but he ended up scaring her more. In the present, Mizuki asks them to take Ai back to the light, and he apologizes to Ai as his body begins to break down. When she wakes up, she pleads with him not to leave her, but it's too late. When Mizuki blows up, Ai cries deeply, and the men just stand with her in silence. When Taio learns that they're fine, Kawashita considers Mizuki an idiot for eliminating himself because of a single person. Suddenly, Shion notifies them that he's been able to break the link between Kawashita and the detonation, so Taio blasts Kawashita with a thunderclap from his upgraded gun. After Kawashita is hit, he ends up unscathed, and he tells Taio that people's lives are inconsequential. As he attempts to manually click a button to detonate the bomb, Kyoichiro slices his hands off and takes off his head after. Glad someone finally got the balls to take someone's life in this series. Suddenly, Kawashita's blood starts to seep back into him and his body begins to rearrange. Meanwhile, Kyoichiro explains that Kawashita was born on this island in 1914, which was almost a century ago. Although they had thought they had mixed him up with someone else, they later confirmed that Kawashita has been around for a pretty long time. Shortly after, Kawashita gets back up and opens his eyes. When his eyes open, the pattern on it is not the Yozakura blooming pattern, but it's the same as the Yozakura blooming pattern. Kyoichiro explains that he learned about the Yozakura family shortly after World War II started. Since he was in medical school, he was approached for a secret mission to study the family and work on a way to send them into war as bioweapons. Kawashita continued his research during the war, but all his research suddenly got destroyed during the war. Confused, Kyoichiro points out something isn't clear because there's no record of them working with the government in the World War because they became independent. Eventually, Kyoichiro admits that the Yozakura didn't agree with his research request, so he had to find other ways. After learning about the Yozakura, Kyoichiro realizes that such a power can create equality and peace, and as such, it would be wrong to let one family have control over the power. Suddenly, Kawashita drops his finger, which grows into a huge mass. He explains that his blooming is regeneration, and he can store the DNA of his test subjects to regenerate them at a later time. Since they've taken out Chacha and stopped the detonation, Kawashita leaves them to go activate his manually. Taio tries to follow him, but the mass left behind stops them from passing. Kyoichiro also tries to break through it, but it doesn't break. Immediately, he realizes that this regenerative power is beyond Yozakura, and he also recalls that he has the Yozakura bloom in his eyes. Kyoichiro is certain he can't replicate the Yozakura bloom no matter how long he's been studying it, but he plans to figure out what happened later. To deal with the monster before them, Kyoichiro ties his strings around Taio's limbs so he can control his limbs. Our boy also activates his blooming, and Kyoichiro uses Taio as a hardened bullet to break through the mass. Taio successfully breaks through, so Kyoichiro tells him to go deal with Kawashita while he cleans up behind him. Taio runs through the halls and signals to the others that he's going after Kawashita. Shion tells him that she's going to disable the detonation system within 5 minutes, so she tells him to smash the tanks in 5 minutes. Apparently, exposing Hazakura to air will cause it to quickly vaporize. Meanwhile, Kawashita goes to the switch and restarts the process. While he's doing that, Taio pushes him down and tells him to surrender. However, Kawashita uses Kurosawa's blades to puncture Taio's vital organs to blunt his Yozakura powers with massive blood loss. He suggests Taio go deal with his pain, but Taio refuses to because his mission is simply to hold back Kawashita until Shion can deactivate the detonation system. Suddenly, Kawashita uses a strange power to reach into Taio's mind and transport him into another place in his mind. In a flashback, Kawashita learns that one of the bases was wiped out and another one is about to be destroyed. He also learns that 2 of his accomplices named Mia and Yama have been eliminated. Suddenly, he notices a dandelion from many years ago surviving in the shadow without any water, so the lady there explains that the life forms around her don't need water or sunlight. The girl's power intrigues Kawashita and he wishes to study it, but he's unable to because they're about to destroy his lab so it doesn't implicate his higher-ups. He wishes he was able to produce any result from his research from the Yozakura he's working with, but he knows he'll soon be eliminated and the Yozakura will be taken back to prison. As he does the last examination, the woman tries to convince him to try once more so they can work out a strategy to survive and live on together. Kawashita admires her positivity, so the woman explains that this war allowed her to be liberated, and Kawashita has helped her learn more about the world so she can be reborn. Apparently, she wants him to help her to be reborn into something that is not a Yozakura because she doesn't like to be worshipped. She wishes to be small and inconsequential, like a dandelion, and she suggests he starts his seed sowing project. Kawashita explains to her his project is just a fantasy, but she yearns for a day where the Yozakura name and history can be eliminated. The woman wishes the weight of being the first head of the Yozakura family was lifted from her and she could just live ordinarily as Tsubomi Yozakura. Tsubomi promises that she'll ensure this happens, even if she has to sacrifice all of her descendants. Immediately, Kawashita slams Taio with his hand and burns his face with Mizuki's poison. Taio asks him how their minds just connected, so Kawashita explains that the blood of the heads resonated with each other, so their blooming spun out of control. Apparently, Tsubomi's plan to populate the world with their power required the blood of her descendants. The only issue was that the technology was unavailable, but now it's available. Suddenly, Kawashita sees a bright light and it turns out that Taio used a move called Stabbing Rain to slice him into bits. Taio explains that he doesn't seem to understand the history behind this or what's going on, but the one thing he does know is that Kawashita eliminated his family and now he's after Mutsumi, so he's going to stop it. Shortly after, Kawashita begins to regenerate and suddenly a mass appears on Taio's body. Kawashita explains that he put the old Yozakura blood that flows through him into Taio's body when he stabbed him, and that doesn't react too well with bodies used to the new Yozakura blood. Suddenly, Taio collapses, and Kawashita tells him his body is being poisoned. He explains that the purpose of his seed sowing project is to give people enough power that they don't need to depend on society. That way, he intends to lessen strife and sorrow just like he saw in the war. Once more, Kawashita pulls Taio's face to himself, and he tells him that they're basically just tools in the hands of the Yozakura family. He connects with his mind and shows him the countless people who have been taken out by the Yozakura after they joined them. He explains to Taio that his life is being toyed with by the Yozakura, so he plans to end his pointless suffering. Shortly after, Taio collapses in Kawashita's hands. In a flashback, Kawashita is shot after completing his research, and the soldiers decide that they're going to hand over Tsubomi to an enemy nation to save the superiors from being summoned to court. Because the research was top secret, Kawashita has to be destroyed along with the lab. However, the soldiers don't know that Kawashita had rigged the place to explode, and it explodes with them still in it. After the explosion, Tsubomi is unscathed, so Kawashita tells her to escape so she can be free. Tsubomi finds him strange because he sacrificed thousands of people to test them with her blood. However, she finds it odd that he would now set her free at the cost of his life. When she asks him why he did it, he explains that there's no reason. Apparently, he grew up on the island and studied medicine because his island was wiped out by the Spanish flu. When he got out, the job he was given was to slice up and dispose of people. Considering the starvation and destruction everywhere, Kawashita believes they're all born into a world of despair, and death awaits them all. However, he knows Tsubomi's fate is different, and he hopes that the hopelessness in this world might reduce if her power is spread abroad. Regardless, he despairs because he knows he'd never see that future, so he asks her to escape and leave him. Suddenly, Tsubomi touches him and tells him to come with her because she wants him to see this future. Just by touching him, she bestows on him the power of the Yozakura blood so he can help her achieve the future where she will be ordinary. After that, they both conceal themselves and create a Tanpopo to achieve their dreams. In the present, Kawashita tells Taio to rest in peace as the life seeps out of him. Meanwhile, Taio tries to get up but is unable to. Oddly, the thought of giving up here and now crosses his mind because he's been fighting many things for so long. Suddenly, his ring begins to shine and Mutsumi's ring shines too. Using the ring, she tries to tell him not to let Kawashita win because she's with him. In the base, Kawashita prepares to relieve Taio from his misery by crushing him. As he's about to do that, Taio flashes back to a time when Mutsumi told him about the rings that allow them to feel each other's heartbeats and breathing. That would be handy and telling when your partner is cheating or has a sudden heartbeat spike at 3 a.m. in the night. She assures him that she'll send her heartbeat through the ring if she senses something is wrong with him, and it will awaken her blood within him. When Kawashita slams Taio, his ring suddenly shines and jolts him awake. Apparently, his blooming increases his body's defenses. Taio admits that Kawashita may have been at the mercy of the Yozakuras, but he doesn't really see things that way. He explains that they're not the same because he sees a future for himself and Mutsumi. Using his sword, he slices open the mask that's covering him and covers the entire place with electricity. With one move, he slices up all the Hazakura containers and releases it. After releasing the Hazakura, Kawashita stabs Taio with his limbs and transforms his body. He explains that he had already absorbed the Hazakura before they deactivated it, so all he needs to do is to self-destruct using a self-destruction bloom. Taio cuts himself free and tries to finish off Kawashita, but he gets thrown back. As Kawashita is about to end things, the siblings enter and notice that the Hazakura content in the air is extremely high. Since Kawashita has changed his form, they wonder how they'll be able to take him out. Shion notifies them that there's an unusual amount of Hazakura in the cyst on Kawashita's left shoulder, so she proposes that they can destroy the plan by destroying that. When Kyoichiro realizes that the Yozakura blood that Kawashita put in Taio is making him react oddly, he proposes that none of them activate their blooming because it can be dangerous for them too. As they prepare to attack, Kawashita assures them his Hazakura cannot be destroyed by cheap tricks, but the siblings don't care. Shinszo goes first and slams the cyst with his alloy weapon. That doesn't change anything, so Kengo goes next and releases several decoys of himself that explode. Regardless, Kawashita claims that the injuries he has sustained are too tiny, but he's surprised when Nanao releases poison into the holes Kengo made to slow him down. While that is going on, Kyoichiro and Futaba release a massive attack towards Kawashita, but nothing changes. After they're done, Kawashita asks them if they're done, and it's clear that his Hazakura isn't depleting after the attack. Because Kawashita is going to explode anytime soon, Kyoichiro decides on another formation to put an end to him. Kyoichiro decides on a game plan to launch Taio at Kawashita, and even though some of them are uncertain about the danger, Taio is determined to do it. Taio is launched at Kawashita, who finds it laughable that they're launching the weakest one out of them. However, Kengo creates several clones of Taio to be launched at Kawashita, and they explode on the monster again. Next up, Futaba rains several attacks of rocks on Kawashita, who keeps wondering what kind of harm these rocks can do to him. However, he doesn't know that Kengo has disguised the real Taio as one of those rocks to break through the ground underneath Kawashita's feet. This is possible because Taio's body has also been reinforced by Nanao's gas and Kyoichiro's wires. Apparently, Taio had suggested this because he was certain that Kawashita had something he was hiding under his feet. Shortly after, Taio breaks through the ground till he reaches a room filled with ice. This is based on the secret mission between him and Kyoichiro, which is to retrieve Rei's body. Taio sees Rei in a cryogenic container, but he sees some threads around her. When he tries to touch the thread, a jolt of electricity flows through his body, and Kawashita detects his presence. Eventually, Kawashita explains that the threads are crystallized summonine woven by Yozakura blood. Apparently, the Hazakura supply is maintained by these Yozakura threads, and Kawashita had found a way to connect the threads to his body from under the ground. He explains that they can destroy his Hazakura stash by cutting the threads, but it's impossible for humans to destroy the threads because a huge summonine explosion would be triggered. If that explosion occurs, neither Taio's nor Rei's body can survive the impact. Regardless, Taio decides not to care, and he grabs a handful of the threads. As blood flows out of his hands, he decides to cut through the threads even though he knows he doesn't have a chance. Recalling the memories of things he has gone through, he concludes that he can go beyond his limits as long as Mutsumi is by his side. Actually, we all know that makes no sense, and the reason he won't get his behind whipped is because of the almighty plot armor, but we don't mind. With one tug, Taio pulls away all the threads and triggers a huge explosion that reaches as far as where the siblings are. During the commotion, Kyoichiro mentions that Taio's hardening bloom is not efficient for weak attacks, but it was specially suited for such a terrible explosion. Underneath the ground, Taio uses his body to shield the explosion, and he protects Rei's body too. When Kawashita notices his Hazakura is leaking, he quickly tries to deflect what's left of it and release it into the ocean. However, Futaba activates her own blooming and seals the explosion with her hands. Meanwhile, Nanao uses his purification blooming to crystallize Kawashita's Hazakura so he can't make it explode. Also, Kengo uses his synchro blooming to bring down Kawashita's summonine fine output. Furthermore, Shion guides Shinszo to use his weapon to constrict Kawashita to his informal size at a specific speed. Since Kyoichiro can't stand around doing nothing, he sends several microscopic threads through Kawashita's body. Shortly after, Taio bursts out of the ground and tells Kawashita to receive his judgment. With one strike, he releases a lightning strike that passes through Kyoichiro's threads and electrocutes each of Kawashita's cells. Kawashita realizes his body is being taken apart and as life seeps out of him. Tsubomi speaks with him. She acknowledges that his plans didn't work out and acknowledges his kindness. He agrees with her but confesses that he enjoyed himself. When he thanks her for indulging him, Tsubomi thanks him for all the results he's gotten from his research, which she plans to hand to someone else to continue. It appears that Tsubomi is still living from the tree that the Yozakuras go to for healing. Not long after, Kawashita dries up. Once that's done, Kyoichiro contacts the rest of the team and learns they've been able to overpower the soldiers and rescue the test subjects. After that, Kyoichiro retrieves Rei's body from Taio so he can plant her on the Yozakura land. Sometime later, Ban confronts Momo about not helping Kawashita during the fight and leaving the island after he lost. Momo doesn't say anything, so Ban points out that he knows that Momo was only ever concerned about Rei's heart. So, when Ban demands that he hand it back, Momo explains that he can't. It belongs to him and his wife. Eventually, Ban fires a gun at Momo, but Momo shields it with his hand. However, the power of the strike is so strong that it blasts the water and boat behind Momo. Momo is impressed by Ban's strike, but he still escapes by disintegrating his body into flower petals. When they leave the island, Kawashita is arrested and imprisoned to face charges for various crimes. Several of his henchmen were also placed under the Spy Association to be monitored. Sometime later, Mutsumi pulls an all-nighter after filing the report. Regardless, she heads out towards Rei's grave and finds Taio weeding the place. To freak him out, she sneaks up to him to scare him, so he tells her he was onto her since she came within 100 meters. Shortly after, they share a beautiful moment while talking about Rei. The next moment, Mutsumi blames Taio for hiding the mission of retrieving her body from them, like all women do. In a flashback, Futaba also pummeled Kyoichiro's face when he gave his speech about keeping it secret because he's the eldest son. In the present, Taio apologizes to Mutsumi because they found out nothing about her father. Regardless, she hugs him for all he did and thanks him. Sometime later, Taio wakes up and randomly finds Mutsumi in a wedding dress. Our boy goes blank until Kengo suddenly dresses him up in a tuxedo. Before he can realize what's going on, he finds the siblings outside leading him to a Yozakura-style wedding reception. They soon head out and have a proper reception for their wedding, with several members of the Spy Association and the police force in attendance, as well as some criminals. For a while, Taio still remains blank, just like every guy is on his wedding day. One moment you are playing video games, the next time you're asked to swear for better or for worse. Meanwhile, Futaba keeps getting rizzed by one strange man who seems to have taken an interest in her, while some lady checks out Shinszo. In another seat, Seiji threatens some criminals to give him the route of their operations, even though he knows they can't get violent during this event. Later, Taio goes to receive a flower from an old man but is shocked when a sword comes out through it. It turns out to be Ban and Keiko wearing a disguise, and they soon expose it out of excitement. Clearly, it was Ban's idea. Soon after, Taio is told that they have a custom where the groom will be tested by each of the guests to know how strong he is. Moreover, Mutsumi's life will also be put in danger in the reception, and he has no choice but to protect her. Everyone seems to find this funny, except Taio, of course. Ban soon offers to protect Mutsumi, so the wedding guests bring out their guns to face Taio while Kyoichiro ties her down. Suddenly, a pre-recorded video Rei made for Mutsumi's wedding reception is played from when Mutsumi was 2 years old. Apparently, Rei gave the video to Futaba for safekeeping all these years. In the video, the siblings hold down Kyoichiro, who keeps trying to keep Mutsumi for himself. In the video, Rei congratulates Mutsumi for her marriage and points out that she knows Kyoichiro might try to eliminate her husband. She apologizes for raising them in such a chaotic family, but expresses her joy that she got to spend time with them. Apart from that, Rei also thanks Mutsumi's husband for choosing her and tells him she's trusting him to look after her daughter. When Taio grabs Mutsumi's hand and promises to take care of her, Kyoichiro goes into another rampage and attempts to finish him. Once they calm down, Taio and Mutsumi walk down the aisle and the guests prepare their guns to see them off. Apparently, the couple are supposed to walk down the aisle under a barrage of bullets, and Mutsumi assures Taio that everyone will protect them. She drags him through the aisle, and it's clear this girl is cuckoo. They run through the aisle, and the siblings fight to shield them along with Ban and Keiko.